go? Getting the okay from WinCam. Well, good evening, everybody. This is the school committee regular meeting of Tuesday, May 8th, 2018. We have a very full agenda. We're going to have public comment on items other than the Skilling's Cha-Cha Field lights policy to lead off, if you are here with a comment about something else on the agenda. Otherwise, public comment which on Skilling's and Cha-Cha Field will be when we get to it in the agenda, which will be, we estimate, around 8 or 8:15. I see that I saw Nate, and so I'm going to say we have a student report from
here too.
And Megan. So our student reps are here and will give us a report. Then we have a report from Lauren Winterer about Connect and Commit, a quick update on the fiscal 19 budget, some action items. It's time for us to do our hearing and annual vote on interdistrict school choice. Then we have a vote on the Skilling's Cha-Cha Field lights policy, and then a vote on the town meeting warrant article on installing lights at Skilling's Cha-Cha Field. It's time to vote to appoint a member to the Cable Advisory Committee. We have some gifts to vote on, one from McCall Middle School Parents Association, one from the high school PFA, one from ENCA, and there's a proposed gift from the Baseball Booster Club that we'll talk about. We have several sets of minutes to approve, then a chair report, superintendent report, and quick discussion of what the future agenda items might be. Our next meeting will be May 22nd, and then the first meeting in June will be on June 5th. So is anyone here for public comment on something other than the Skilling's Cha-Cha Field lights topic? So I guess not.
I'd love to just say something about Connect and Commit. That's why I'm here.
Oh,
I've
all right.
been on their board since the very beginning. It's a small portion of the people you affect.
Okay.
To me, this is one of the best bang for the buck programs you have. I know it started when my son was in the high school, and he's almost 30 now, so it's been going on
around
for a while. And I
yes.
just want to make sure that it continues, because we've been carrying it along for a long time, and I think it's a terrific program.
Great. And you're Sally Quinn, I know.
I'm Sally. I'm
Yeah.
Sally
For
Quinn.
the minutes. Yeah.
Precinct 4.
Thank you, Sally.
She hasn't been to a school committee meeting in a while.
That's okay. Okay, so why don't we then go straight into Connect and Commit. Actually, I'm skipping the student report again. Guys, it's helpful if I can see you. I'm sorry. So.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Sure. So to start off, WinBlock is official for next year. 88%, it received 88% student approval and 84% faculty approval. The Math MCAS will be May 23rd and May 24th. Boys volleyball beat Lexington last Friday in their strikeout ALS game, and I was there. It was an amazing game. They played very well, and the energy in the gym was just wonderful, and it was nice to see everyone coming together for that. And then there are a lot of senior events coming up, with our last day of school being May 18th. Awards night will be May 16th. The senior final exams will take place on May 21st through May 25th. On May 30th is senior prom, and then June 3rd is graduation.
Happening so quickly, yeah.
I want to quickly add on that I think our ultimate frisbee team just won a match.
Oh.
Today.
Ultimate Frisbee.
Aside from that, AP exams are just getting started up this week, and they'll continue into next week. The high school will be hosting one of the NEASC visits, either the 21st or 22nd of this month, maybe both days. The sophomores just had their Hawaiian-themed dance last Friday at WHS. It was a big success, beach balls and all. The junior dance will be this Friday, also Hawaiian-themed. We're very original. And most importantly, I have on my notes Relay for Life this Friday at McCall. All money raised will be going to the American Cancer Society, and I've been told there will be food, a bouncy house, and movies in that order.
Oh, wow.
Very important.
So there's a lot going on as usual.
Very
That's
busy.
great. Anybody have any quick questions for our student reps? Nope.
I just put in a plug for Strawberry Pops. I think
Oh,
that's
yes.
tomorrow night.
Completely forgot
Grab
about
some
that. I'm
strawberry
sorry.
shortcake and hear the talents of our music program at the high school as well.
Of course.
Thanks, guys.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
And I forgot to mention right at the outset, I was going to say that it's great that today, I think, is going to be the first of what I hope becomes many annual special education teacher appreciation days. It's Teacher Appreciation Week. And we around the table here certainly support our teachers and think it's great that we do these things to show them how much we care every year. So, forgot to mention that. Okay. So you're gonna hang around for?
I'm
Yep.
here for Ken.
Good. Okay. So now we'll go into Connect and Commit.
I have a little presentation if I plug it in.
Some slides. Okay.
Oh, did you already print those out?
Yeah, nice.
Try and make it quick.
Okay.
Jen, can you help her set that up?
Thank you.
Oh, no, you need to, no fancy printers here. Actually, I take that back. Somebody has it. You want me to click?
Sure. That'd be great.
Lauren, I apologize. We should have told you we could send those ahead of time. And
That's okay.
yeah.
So I'm Lauren Winter. I'm here with Connect and Commit. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what Connect is, what it has been, where it is, where it's going, and a little bit about who we are. So our objectives tonight are to introduce you to the Winchester Community Service Foundation, aka Connect and Commit, demonstrate the efficacy of service learning embedded into classroom curriculum, like I said, some of the past and current projects that we've been working on, share some of our student experiences with our lovely students here, and convey the need for a service learning coordinator as part of the Winchester Public School. So, the Winchester Community Service Foundation is a nonprofit that operates Connect and Commit, the service learning program. The way the position works, I'm the program director of Connect and Commit. I break it down 50-50, but that's not exactly how it works out, or it shakes out. 50% is an after-school club that's facilitated by me, but run by our leaders. And the other 50% of the job is getting service learning embedded into our classrooms at all of the schools. With that being said, I am located at the high school, so that's where the majority of our work takes place. For the first 10 years, this was completely 100% privately funded through the Winchester Community Service Foundation. And for the past 4 years, it's been 80% funded by the Winchester Community Service Foundation, and 20% of that's been public or through the schools. So all in for the past 14, 15 years, the foundation has raised about $1 million for the district. And that number is a rough number, but if we're talking about approximately 200 students per year for 14 years, about 2,800 students have been affected. That's really just in the high school. We're not thinking about all the other programs that we've touched. So I get a lot of questions about what exactly service learning is, and I think there's a big confusion between community service and service learning or community-based learning. And this is just the standard definition: teaching and learning that challenges students to identify, research, propose, and implement solutions to real needs in their school or community as part
big difference between community service, I'll give you an example, you can look here, is if you do a drive, you're just sending it out, or you're doing a fundraiser, there's no academic piece to that. If you do a project, like just happened in the, not just happened in the beginning of the year, happened in 3rd grade at Lincoln, which I'll go into a little bit now, you see these 3 main components that happen as a part of service learning. So there's academic integrity, student ownership, and apprentice citizenship. So to outline how that works, I'll go through this project just a little bit. At Lincoln, you can stay on that one for a little bit. So at Lincoln, a teacher had come up with an idea. She wanted to respond to the hurricane in a thoughtful way. Instead of just doing a drive, she wanted to get her students involved. She wanted it to be part of her curriculum. She wanted to solve a problem with a partner in the community. So she reached out to me and we came up with this plan together. She taught her students about Puerto Rico, history, geography. She taught her students about hurricanes and weather patterns, about the needs of people, shelter, food. She taught them how to do a drive, how to make flyers, how to public speak, how to talk to their community members, their teachers, their family. Then they did the drive. They collected the items, organized them, itemized them, made a sheet, a graph, excuse me, and then they took that information and presented it to their peers. So when they did this problem, it was really an interdisciplinary approach to service that connected directly with what they do in their classrooms. There was geography, history, math, English, public speaking, you name it, they did all of it. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about service learning. It's a step beyond just putting that box outside your classroom. It's actually reaching into the classroom, touching upon the subjects and the interdisciplinary topics that you go over, and really applying that in an experiential, hands-on way. And the students really take ownership of that. You know, they felt that they made an impact and they furthered their educational process. So we can move to the next one. When we're talking about that apprentice citizenship, a big part of my position in that is I facilitate teachers, but overall, they know how to teach their classes. They might need help connecting to the community, and that's something that I've been able to do in my position through the Winchester Public Schools. I've been able to get to all the schools and PFAs, through local businesses and organizations. I've been well connected to the Red Cross, Rotary, Student on the Anchor. I'm now on the steering committee I'm the newest member of the steering committee for the Winchester Multicultural Network, and I'm on the school and youth committee. And I'm also part of the executive board of the Winchester Youth Alliance. So I've really been trying my best to get my fingers out into the community to make those connections so that we can bring our community members into our school and our school out into our community. So I'm sure you're all sick of seeing this, but I wanted to show it to you because I really think that...
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, cool. I wanted to show this to you, and we can just skip right to the next one. You don't need to look at it too long. Because I think service learning could be a key mechanism for implementing the strategic vision. For what we just talked about, that one example, I think you can see how we can collaborate well with our community, with our students, with our classrooms, with our teachers. There's individual pathways in a service learning project. Not everybody needs to go the exact same route to come out with one outcome that helps everybody. And there's balance and wellness. There's the feel-good factor, of course. But there's also that students benefit academically, socially, and emotionally from projects like this. They develop skills, they can explore numerous career options, and appreciate the value of civic engagement. Teachers make education more relevant to their students, collaborate with their colleagues and community partners, and find themselves professionally energized. Admins see a boost in staff and student morale as desired student outcomes are achieved. Parents get more involved with their students, have more to say, maybe more involved with their schools, and community partners get to reach into their schools and they learn from their students and vice versa. These are some of the ongoing projects that we have. Senior Focus is a class that was originally started by Connect and Commit 14 years ago. They do internships out in the community. Physics, this was a new one this year. We did crash test where we're talking about drivers, young drivers who are about to enter the roadways or already have. The real physics behind the impact that they can have out on the road, what it means to really hit a tree or a telephone pole, some of the circumstances that have happened in our community. And then they did an a project and crashed into the egg drop. And from that kind of extrapolated what would happen if this were a tree, if this were a telephone pole, what can we do out in the world to stop this from happening or to make our world a safer place for our cars. There was a citizen science project with endangered species, raising salamanders, endangered salamanders. The Living History podcast, we actually had somebody come in and teach kids how to use podcast and radio equipment. And then after that, we had veterans come in and they could use the skills they had just learned to support their veterans. We just talked about the Hurricane Relief Project. Relay for Life is a big project that we do, and it is major fundraising. We've raised over $500,000 in the past 6 years that we've been doing it. But there's also a lot of other things that we do. We went to the State House for Lobby Day. We mentor elementary and middle school students. There's a lot of civic engagement and awareness involved. Within the club, we have, it's not just the club, mentoring program, Drop Everything and Read, where students can get lynched. We're doing a service learning network. Some of these guys are actually involved going to Ambrose. And they are working on a project with fifth graders and cradles and crayons. And then we have the Connect and Commit after school club. And, you know, we've met so many times this year that it's hard to get into it. But there's a piece of paper in the back of this packet that kind of goes through all the different projects. If you have any questions about that, just go ahead and take a look back here. And with that being said, I think these guys can actually talk to you a little bit about some of those projects and what that means to them.
Yeah, sorry, you gotta share the mic. But.
My name's Nate Burns. I've been a leader on the leadership team for Connect and Commit for the past 2 years. I joined Connect and Commit because I was attracted to the idea of making an impact on my community, whether it was my immediate community, family, friends, or a much larger community extending to the world as a whole, as we see through Relay for Life and initiatives like that. And switch back to yesterday, actually. I met with Miss Winter and told her that I was all set to go for tonight. I had a list of all my favorite Connect and Commit service opportunities. I was pumped. I lied a little bit. I started to make a list, and there's plenty for me to write down, but I realized that it all contributed to the same idea of service learning that Ms. Winter just talked about. And through that, thinking about it just now, actually, I identified cooperation, creativity, and compassion. Those are the three things that Connect and Commit has taught me almost immediately when I became not only just a member and a leader, but it continues to teach me things about that. And I think I remember last meeting, Dr. Evans said that learning has to be interdisciplinary because life is interdisciplinary. And to me, that really strikes right into the heart of what Connect and Commit does and service learning as a whole, because the most effective types of things you can do out in the world, they don't just affect you. You have to be creative, solve solutions that aren't immediately available, aware to you. You have to cooperate with others, and most importantly, your solutions have to in some way help someone else, whether it's as small as holding the door open for someone or, again, raising millions of dollars for some sort of disease research. And my personal anecdote about how I've been able to really get that experiential, hands-on service learning, again, that Ms. Winter just talked about, is through Indigenous Peoples Day. And so back in the early fall, it's a while ago now, Connect and Commit hosted a meeting on Indigenous Peoples Day, and I was lucky enough to help lead that meeting specifically. And we talked a lot about the contributions that Indigenous peoples have made, not only to our immediate geography here in Massachusetts, Winchester, but as a whole America. And I really enjoyed the fact that I had sat in history class almost a week before and read out of a textbook, this is all the stuff that Native Americans have done for us. And then to come to that Connect and Commit meeting a week later, sit down and say, okay, this is how we can bring a voice to that, what we're learning in school, how are we going to promulgate this information? How are we going to get this out there? How are we going to make a change? And through that, I've really delved into it. It's actually, hopefully, we'll be hearing from that again soon. I've been working with local government and really honing in on my skills to communicate with others and listen to others, more importantly, the student body, as we think that Indigenous people should be recognized. And again, that's what service learning is all about. You're cooperating with others. I know both of my peers here and a bunch of them over there have been a big part of support for Indigenous Peoples Day. And we're thinking creatively. Again, one of the biggest issues I found was, if there's no Columbus Day on a calendar, what are we going to do about that? Well, there's several solutions to that. We just have to think outside the box. And most importantly, compassion, and we're bringing a voice that's been lost, and we are representing a minority that really deserves to be recognized. And so that's why service learning is important to me. That's personally why I love Connect and Commit, why I try to somehow bring service learning into everything I do, and I hope that gives a little bit of perspective into why it would help if service learning was more integrated into our curriculums in schools.
Hi, I'm Chella Lucetti. I'm a junior at Winchester, and I'm very involved in the school. But the thing that makes Connect and Commit unique to all other clubs and activities at the school is that all people from different friend groups, sports teams, and activities cross paths, and we all come together, and that's just all forgotten. There's no status. We are all the same. We are all students at Winchester, and we all have the same motives to help the community. And I came from outside the school my freshman year, so I walked in on my first day not knowing a single person, and I went to the Connect and Commit meeting that immediate Thursday, and I made friends that I'm still friends with who have already graduated today, and I know I'll be friends with for a long time. So as a junior, I'm looking at colleges, and the ones that really stand out to me and most of my peers are the ones that integrate service learning into their curriculum and make that their big projects. And I think that's very important, and especially in problem solving, because I think students need more exposure to situations where they have to think fast and need to find solutions, because that's how life is. And if they're not prepared, then things won't go well. But I'm president of Red Cross, so therefore I'm coordinating with Connect and Commit with blood drives, and it's just great to get people involved in situations that experiences that they wouldn't usually put themselves in. And Relay for Life, as Mrs. Winter mentioned, has also been a big part of my life, and it's given me great leadership skills, both Connect and Commit and Relay, and amongst others. But yeah, this means a lot to me, and it's been a big pillar of my life.
Hi, these are some hard acts to follow. I'm Daniel Kwong. I am a current junior. Unlike Nate, I joined Connect and Commit as a freshman, not really with a greater sense of purpose, like I'm here to help my community. In all honesty, my brother made me go. He was the leader at the time. And since then, like, I was kind of pushed into this, but now I've realized it's like grown on me, and I've realized the difference that we're making in our community. So I've been a leader on Connect and Commit since my freshman year. So like the moment I walked into the meeting, like Chella, like it's a different it's a different group of people that you would normally hang out with. You make friends that you won't normally make, and the community aspect, I think, of service learning is also a big part of it, because you talk to people you might not talk to in school, and it just creates a friendlier environment for all. So the biggest part is that for people like me who don't really have that original sense of I want to help people through something like service learning, if we integrate that into the classrooms, people who maybe wouldn't originally join a club like Connect and Commit will come, and if they want to help more, they can definitely help more. But if it's not for them, they can make a difference, but it's not something that they're pushed into all the way. As Nate mentioned, there are a lot of like big experiences that like help like shape me for like who I am today. A big meeting I enjoyed was the Oxfam Hunger Banquet, which basically we like split everyone into different classes, and some people would get minimal amounts of like rice and beans, and like top 1% like a pasta meal. And I feel like that exemplifies service learning because we're teaching them that like we're not all like the whole world isn't living in Winchester. There are different classes and there's a struggle for everyone every day. We told stories of like people who got affected by hurricanes and how that moved them up and down like a class system, and it really raised awareness, and I feel like it was a powerful thing for people to walk away from that meeting. Also, like just in general, service learning is not something I would, as I mentioned many times, that I would be involved with if my brother hadn't pushed me in here, but I'm very glad that it's a part of my life now. I go every Thursday, I look forward to it, and I feel like incorporating that into classrooms can like, hopefully other people can enjoy it like I did.
Thanks, guys. So just to finish up, Connect and Commit has been around for 15 years, and for what's coming next, I think that we need to be part of the school district. As it is right now, we've done a lot, but that's really only a fraction of what we think is possible. We really feel that we could be in more classrooms at every school and making a bigger impact every day. Like I said, technically, right now I'm in the school, but I am underneath the nonprofit. The program director is under the nonprofit. That's who I report to. There's no evaluation process. There's no systems around me, no support. And without that direct support, I'm lacking in real authority. When I go to teachers and principals, they all like the idea of service learning, but their teachers are overwhelmed. There's a lot going on. You know, they don't know necessarily where it fits. And without that mandate, without that expectation, without the support from the district, I've run into many dead ends. And it's not for a lack of trying. I've met with every principal. I've met with the admins. I've spoken at every faculty meeting, or at every school, I should say, not every faculty meeting. I've spoken at every school's faculty meeting. I've raised money to give out grants to teachers as incentives. I've worked on getting accreditation for service learning on our diplomas. And with all that, I still come up short in what I feel could be such a powerful tool in our classrooms. And it's not just me. I know that this comes from the admin. I know that this comes from our parents in the community. I can see that the beacons that have come up. I mean, in the past couple of weeks, I've met with 4 different parent groups that have started that want to see inclusivity and diversity and equity in their schools and are willing to push it into to push and fight to get this to be part of their school systems, and have come to me and said, how can we do this? And I think what the next step needs to be is that we need to make it part of the district. The want and need for service learning is there. I just think we need to take the next step. And with that, if anybody has any questions, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say.
Well, I think Judy might have some things to.
Sure, I can share a little bit about that. And I'm pleased to see some members from the Connect and Commit board and supporters who have worked so hard and had a vision to ensure that service learning really did become integrated into the district. I think and Lauren and I have talked at length about this. I think I'm the biggest fan of Connect and Commit and service learning. I think it's at the heart of everything that we should be doing in an integrated curriculum. The difficulty comes, I think, in the traditional school structures where our subject matters are really segregated, and we're really focused on goals that include a standardized testing focus as opposed to measurement of the real skills that Nate talked about, including creativity and collaboration and compassion. The things that we've articulated in our vision that are more important or as important as the academic content standards that we're working towards as well. So the disconnect has been that this is an outside organization that has long been part of the school but not embedded in the school culture in terms of the director being an employee of the school, subject to the same evaluation criteria that our teachers have. And so I think a lot of it is just people don't like to step on each other's toes. I think Lauren has been increasingly assertive with doing things that I've asked her to do, meeting with all the principals, speaking at faculty meetings, trying to reach out to mentor and coach teachers. And because our curriculum is already 250 days of content in a 180-day school year, it gets really difficult. So I think what we need to do is take a close look at what can we take out of the curriculum, what are we teaching that is not as important, and then so that the choice is not one more thing on top of everything that we're already teaching and learning, but how can we refocus? And that's this long and slow process. And so we've been working towards that. One thing that Lauren and I have been doing collaboratively is developing a job description for the service learning coordinator. The plan is to transition this position into a fully funded school district position, a full-time position, and see how the job description works. It is going to require teaching certification, which Lauren has, and that this person become a member of our staff and is evaluated with the same standards as other teachers. So there's still some negotiation to do on the union side to be sure that this works, because a lot of the work that Lauren does is necessarily after school weekends and vacations, and not so much just during the hours of the school day. Students are in class during the hours of the school day, so that becomes more challenging. So financially, we've been talking with the board about taking more responsibility for some of the financial piece of the salary for the coordinator. The board is going to gradually transition to zero support, and part of the big cost for the board has been benefits, and so if Lauren became more than a half-time teacher, she would be eligible for benefits, or whoever had this position. So those are the things that we're talking about behind the scenes. So at the next school committee meeting, I'd like to put forward a job description for the coordinator, have you talk about that, give me some feedback, go back to Lauren, see what else we need to do to tweak that. And then our plan is to post the position. Obviously, Lauren is, anytime there's a teaching position, we have to open it up, but clearly the person who has the most qualification right now in this district is Lauren, should she choose to accept. And we will move forward with making a plan over the next couple of years to see how we can embed this in everything that we do K to 12. I've long talked with Lauren about the high school kids are great. They are so busy. The middle school kids are prime. They have more time, they have the passion, they just need the structure. And the elementary students need a lot of parent support, but then you embed service learning in their hearts, and then it's become something that they expect to do, as opposed to your brother drags you into it, makes you do it. So the other thing I think that's really important is we have a strong service-oriented culture. If we were to add up all the hours that all our students give for service to others, it would stagger, I think, all of us. But I would like to embed, and Lauren and I have talked about this, a recognition on the diploma for service learning that's different from just raising money or doing drives, that is really about showing through some kind of a demonstrated product that you have mastered the skills that we know are embedded in service learning, and so that's another thing we're working towards. So, you know, as superintendent, I think it's my job to support this as strongly as possible, and to recognize what great, to have hung in there for 15 years as an outside group to try to make this happen is just heroic. And I've met with that board a number of times. I can't tell you how highly I think of them. They're just a great group of people who have no skin in the game. They just want to make sure that this is a great experience for kids. And so I would encourage school committee members to support this transition, to embed this in our culture and in our expectations for students. So that's my position, and I'm sure you have other questions for me or for Lauren.
I just want to commend the students for all their hard work too, because not only is it the board that supported this, and we really appreciate you, but without the kids, like Judy said, the number of hours you add up, without the kids having the commitment to see the projects through too, we wouldn't be where we are today and ready to make this transition. I guess I'm curious, and I don't know if this is a question for Lauren or you, Dr. Evans, but whether if we're looking at embedding it as part of the curriculum, would it then have a curriculum?
So that's really interesting. So I think that much like technology is a tool, and we teach technology skills through other curriculum units. Service learning should be embedded within other curriculum units, other interdisciplinary units, with some specific sort of scope and sequence in terms of what are the beginning skills that you would want elementary students to have for service learning, and how can you see that as a spiraled kind of curriculum. So it's not a standalone, but it's an integration into everything we do. I think the biggest challenge for service learning is making people understand that it's about learning through giving service and how all the pieces fit together, as opposed to I'm going to raise money for a specific cause and write a check, which is not service learning.
Right.
And so that's the push that we really need to work towards. And sometimes the most gratifying part of service learning is what the student said, is working with other people you wouldn't normally work with, learning the skills of collaborating with others to achieve a goal, and learning to negotiate that pathway. And I think that's what you're really learning in that instance, and not just, you saw a project about a science project on fish. You have to learn a lot about fish, but that's sort of the side benefit of embedding the service learning piece. So the skills are somewhat soft skills and a little bit harder to measure, but I think you have to be really deliberate and put some time and energy into every curriculum unit you write to say, how can I integrate service learning into this unit? And how can I assess students' skills and progress so that we can talk about what they've learned and help them continuously improve those skills.
Scaffold it for them,
And scaffold
too.
it for them. Right, for different learners who are at different readiness levels.
I would encourage, I don't know the list of professional development, but I would encourage having opportunities for all teachers to take service learning professional development skills, because I can see how amazing service learning would fit into a social studies curriculum and all that. So I really think our teachers need that set of skills in line with developing a curriculum at all levels. I had another point.
So just to support that, the state several years ago had a very strong service learning initiative that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education developed professional development for and provided grant money for to sort of jumpstart it, and then it sort of fizzled out. And I think the reason it fizzled out is if it's not embedded in what you do as a normal practice, it can't be a standalone. And Lauren, I don't know if you've had what kind of professional development you've had in service learning, and how you would assess teachers' readiness, but it might be interesting to hear that.
I've actually gone through the service learning program with the state and done some of that professional development, and I've actually held professional development for teachers. So it has happened. What we see is that it's a small number of people that sign up for the professional developments. They usually have a project in mind that they're already working on, which is great. And oftentimes it's not directly in line with service learning. So I'm trying to not box them in, but bring them in and make it a whole rounded service learning project. And they're like, I kind of just want to do what I'm working on. So I think, like what you said, if it's not an expectation, if it's not part of what we do, it's an extra. And I think teachers, I was a teacher, and I remember getting things from above and saying, oh, well, you're going to do this today. And thinking,
not so much.
That's extra work that I already have my curriculum laid out. I know what I'm going to do this year. I'm not willing to change. So unless that's something that is embedded, that's part of our culture, that's what we do every day, that teachers are excited about, that it's not something that's going to happen moving forward. And that's definitely what I've run into the last 4 years.
I would also, we have so many community-based organizations. Lauren is now a member of the Multicultural Network. We have a lot of new ones and developing ones. We have the Town Common that's bringing all of them together. I think tapping into the expertise and the drive that we have within our community is a good thing. It's good to, like Winchester for Peace. We do service learning with our kids as motivated parents. Most of them are elementary school. So having that be an encouraged push, especially given with what we just went through in our budget, I think we have to be very mindful of public education and its limitations. In addition, we can do more professional development, more partnership with the private organizations, the nonprofits in our community.
Brian, did you have anything?
Just quickly, I want to thank you for coming in, especially the students. I love looking through this, and then I get to the end, I see somebody who I'm a friend with at the gym, who's now at Haverford, Abby, who started Deer, and I was talking to her parents, also at the gym, and they said, oh, she's working on that down at Haverford, trying to, it said that in here too, but she was giving me a little bit more details. I thought that was exciting, that something that was started here is expanding beyond here, so I was thrilled to see that. Also, she's an awesome person, so that was exciting. A question sort of a little bit astray from what we were talking about right now. What are the interactions, if any, that you've had with the youth center? Is there any sort of working with the youth center at all, which is now no longer has a home? It seems like there would be opportunities for bringing in service learning of some sort to the youth center.
Is it true that I thought there was a home?
So we've offered a space at the high school. There's certainly a designated space. I think that the rec department is still kind of figuring out what the youth center is going to be. So we're really in a very significant transition period for the youth center.
So I guess I'm sort of thinking more historically, because I know we're in transition. I know the youth center is under the auspices
of the rec
center.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like these are organizations that could be working together, and maybe they haven't, and maybe they could in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, no, we definitely work with the youth center, and up until Rebecca left this year, the youth center went into its transitional period. We work together often. The Relay for Life is actually a direct result of the youth center and Connected Commit working together. Projects and things that we have taken on, but because we're in this place, we don't want to take on more that's going to eventually go back, and it's a transitional place. But yeah, we certainly do work with the youth center, and it's been a great partnership.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yes?
So I want to pick up on Judy's question about, or comment about school structure. I guess a logistics question for me. If and when this becomes more embedded in the curriculum, am I right in assuming, though, there's still you and students would still see value in having that regular club meeting, which for years now I guess has been Thursday evenings. Is that right? Just because that's so, if you will, accessible. So I wonder if could our students just speak to, for those of you who are athletes or musicians or both, you have regular after-school commitments. Can you just share with us how do you juggle that? What is literally the timing like for Connect and Commit on a Thursday? That's my initial question. And the second one is, with a change in school start time, it all shifts a little. So that means athletics will be later, marching band practice later, various other engagements will be later. Is there any concern on your part, Lauren, about how that might impact, the timing next year if we stick with that evening meeting? But first, I'm just curious what the students would say about, what sort of juggles you have to make, if any, to make this work.
I mean, personally, Connect and Commit's the priority. If I have sports, I have sports. Like, right now, our times are a little later because our coach works during the evening, so I'll skip my sport or leave early to go to Connect and Commit because I feel like we're making a bigger impact there than I'll make in 30 minutes during my sport. As to later start times, I don't know how that will affect us, but hopefully that it will still be a priority and we'll still able to make the meetings happen.
For me, same with Dan. Thursdays have always just been dedicated towards Connect and Commit. I work after school. I used to do sports, but I'd leave early to come. If the school start time is pushed back, then, I think then we'd still get the same attendance rates as we do right now.
Just trying to think. I guess I've been pretty lucky that I don't have too many conflicts on Thursdays. Just my meets don't happen to fall on Thursdays often. When they do, it's a scramble. But that's just the sacrifice I've made. And I definitely have to say that I've scheduled around student council and Connect and Commit. Those are my main priorities. And then athletics with track. Luckily, first half of the day, straight into those two. With the shift, I'm fairly confident in saying that I'm just going to have my workload dumped onto the end of my night, even more so. that's just how it's going to be, because I'm not going to give up either one of my commitments. As much as I love homework.
You'll be so well rested, you'll feel more motivated to participate.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
So I asked that
Right with both
question.
hands, yes.
I asked that question because I would hope that all of our students who have that interest in Connect and Commit either feel confident advocating for that time with their coaches or their teachers, or that it's sort of understood within the system that it's okay for that to be a priority, because we've all talked before conflicts happen. It's great that we have some coaches that can be understanding on a regular basis. I would hope that that happens all the time. I'm not sure that it does happen all the time, but maybe again makes the case for this being a little more integrated with sort of our district mission. Thank you.
So you're not looking for anything from us in terms of a vote right now, it's when you come back with the.
We'll bring the job description back at the next meeting.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So I'm feeling bad that all you guys are standing. I don't know if the room next door is open.
It is open.
Probably you could sit
Yeah, more chairs.
and-
There's no chairs.
or drag some chairs in. I don't think the fire marshal would notice, so, I'm sorry.
We're on TV or anything.
Not like we're on TV or anything, yeah, but I apologize. You wanna do your budget update? Yep.
So, for those of you in the audience who may not have been in attendance at town meeting or
Yeah.
had been riveted by the lengthy debate, it went into the well into the evening last night. The FY19 budget was supported by town meeting at the rate that had been proposed by the town manager.
Right.
The school committee voted budget is about $85,000 more than the town has allocated at this point, and so what the school department has to spend is what was allocated at town meeting. So at some point between now and the end of the year, we need to hone in on how we're going to meet that target. Ellen and I talked about it today, and we had proposed a number of alternatives, including reduction in a business office position. And one of the things we're really looking at closely is, will we need the enrollment-related position that we have a placeholder for at the elementary level? And as we're closing in on sort of preliminary numbers based on kindergarten enrollment, we'll have a good idea. And so our thought was to wait a little bit and vote in June. Yeah, you'll have to vote the budget, but really the bottom line is the bottom line. And really what we need to vote is more specificity about what we're going to include in that budget. And so I didn't know whether any members had any questions or things you'd like us to investigate between now and then. The other issue that we will need to resolve at the next meeting is the FY18 budget, or maybe the first June meeting, to look at how much we'll ask for from the special education newly created reserve fund. And we're trying to ask for that as close as possible to the end of the year so that we take as little as possible from it, because there's no way to replenish it. If we're still awaiting word on circuit breaker reimbursement to see whether there'll be an additional allocation, that's still working its way through the legislature and has not yet been signed by the governor. So lots of sort of factors in play both for the FY18 budget and the FY19 budget. But we will have more budget transfers likely at the next meeting, just to make sure that we're extremely transparent about how we're hitting the finish line at the end of this year at zero, with no dollars remaining to be spent. I just wanted to be sure you had a chance to touch base after town meeting to be sure that your questions were answered. I was gratified to see that a resident stepped forward to try to emphasize the importance of the improvements to our world language program. I thought that was really gratifying, and a recognition that in our culturally and ethnically and racially diverse school district, that particularly the addition of a non-Western language should be made a priority, and the achievement of mastery over 2 languages, one in addition to English, is got to be a priority for our students to prepare them for the world that is. And so I was gratified to see that support, even though I knew that it could not be funded without digging deeper into free cash. So, so that's where we stood on, and I was very grateful to town meeting for supporting our budget. It did require a substantial dig into free cash, which was much higher than we've needed to take in the past. And there was much discussion about the need for an operational override for FY20, almost certainly both for municipal and for school needs. And the more we can talk about that and build understanding and support for that, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah, it was, you know, I think we were all at town meeting for most of it, and you know, I was kind of inspired by how all of the speakers, you know, from the select board to finance committee and us, you know, and the town manager, just we're all sort of a team effort on making it clear and educating the public and making it clear that we've really come to the end of where we can maintain our quality of services as a town across the board with the resources that we have. And it's been a long time since we had an operational override. We've had building overrides, but and we realize that it's you know, a significant impact on the community, but we're at the point where we really do need to have more operating funding.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that bothered me at town meeting was that the last word on a town meeting member assumed that because we hadn't put world languages in our budget, that we weren't in support of it. I would like to reiterate that school committee is in support of world languages going down to the younger grades. We're just limited by budget. But we are all, I assume, I've seen the votes that we are all in support of world languages in the younger ages.
A couple of questions about on the FY18 piece, because the clock is ticking. So we have a school committee meeting scheduled on June 5th, which is actually the first Tuesday of June, given how the days sort of meter out. Because this requires a vote of both the school committee and the select board, and I'm assuming that as much as you and Ellen would like to get to a hard number, you still want to wind up a little more rather than a little less. And if there's anything less, I'm assuming those dollars would be eligible, for instance, to prepay tuitions for next fiscal year.
Or retain circuit breaker.
And so whatever we might do with that remainder, I'm thinking is also a decision point during June, before June 30th. So I wanted to just pose the question, if we meet on the 5th to the chair, are you thinking we're also then meeting on the 19th? And if that's the case, maybe we could, and we can talk about it at the end of the meeting tonight, try to kind of map out how quickly we really need to come up with this number, because you're going to have to get something to the board. I gather you want us to discuss it and vote it first, Judy, before it goes to the select board.
Right.
But then that's got to get posted. There will be some discussion. Perhaps they would want you to be there at the meeting. It'd be the first appropriation. And then, of course, the issue of what do we do with the remainder as the year is sort of running out. I mean, it's almost upon us, even though we just had town meeting last night.
And you're talking about the reserve fund.
The
Yeah.
special
Yes.
reserve fund.
Yeah, talking about the reserve fund, yeah. Newly appropriated, newly
We-
funded.
We try to have 2 meetings a month.
Yep.
And school will be in session, so, yeah.
Piggyback on this
Yeah.
question, is June 30th a hard stop? And the reason I ask that is I know on finance committee you had till July 15th to finish up.
Well,
the
I don't
June-
know. They tell us June 30th.
That's what that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, Ellen can speak to that, I think.
So as far as, I will have additional conversations with the comptroller regarding our hard stop.
Yeah.
That date was, as you had indicated, was more of a mid-July date in the as far as I had been my understanding when I came last summer, which was after July 15th. So I will have those conversations with Mrs. Ward moving forward.
Okay. That gives us a little bit more flexibility to actually perhaps
Fine tune
have
it,
to do
yeah.
it on a later meeting in June, have a number that's tighter.
Yeah.
Potentially. I mean, we don't want to be on the 15th meeting and scrambling of July.
Or on July 4th. There's no school committee meeting on July 4th.
There is not.
Okay.
Right. The expenses continue, and
Yeah.
through June 30th and into the summer, particularly for special education. Some students are now being placed in extended evaluations that might continue even until the summer, and so We can incur substantial expenses even in the last week in June. So it's a little bit of a guessing game. And as you know, I hate to be this tight, but we'll figure it out. I'm confident.
Okay. So every year we have a discussion and public hearing on inter-district school choice. So it's come time to do that again, and we have to have a public hearing. So I'd be looking for someone to move that we go into the public hearing, and I think we have to have a roll call vote.
I think we do.
Yeah.
So I move that the school committee open a public hearing on school choice for the 2018-19 school year.
I second.
So I'm going to go around here to vote. Ms. Marchant, Mr.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and the chair votes aye. So, Judy, do you have any?
Sure, just very briefly.
Yep.
The Ed Reform Act of 1993 expanded interdistrict school choice in two important ways. The first assumption is that all school districts will be presumed to be participant unless we specifically vote not to participate. And the second change is that the tuition the receiving district could charge was capped at a state mandated level. If the district chooses not to participate in the school choice program, we have to have a public hearing, then I need to notify the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education by June 1st. So, what way school choice works is, you would open school choice if you had empty seats for enrollment, and were open to accepting students from other districts into your district. There are many districts in the state that have school choice. It helps with diversity, it helps with finances. It's a good thing for those districts. Unfortunately, we are not one of those districts. We have 0 empty seats. We have negative empty seats, if there is such a thing. No mathematicians in the audience. We are overcrowded at every grade level, and so as superintendent, I recommend that we not participate in school choice for the 18-19 school year because we have no space to accept any students from outside Winchester.
Since this is a public hearing, and there are members of the public, does anyone want to make a comment about school choice? I guess.
Would you like a motion to close the public hearing?
The public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Bergstrom?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay. So
now
the
the
hearing is
vote.
closed.
Would you like a motion?
Yes.
I move that the Winchester Public Schools not participate in the school choice program for the 2018-19 school year because of increasing enrollment and space limitations.
I second.
Is there any discussion? I think this can just be a regular vote, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So it's around 8, which is what I told people, between 8 and 8:15. So I guess we're going to move into our discussion of, I would like to take this out of order that it ended up on in the agenda. I added the vote to support the town meeting warrant article, and without really thinking about it, put it before the vote on the policy. I think I've heard from some of you that we should probably do the other order. So we're going to talk about the light policy first. So is anyone here for public comment on the use of lights at Skilling's Cha-Cha Field and would like to comment? Yes. Yes, please. Just the ground rules are, as I think many of you already know, please talk into the mic so that WinCam can capture your comments, identify yourself and your street where you live. And try to keep your comments relatively brief because we have a lot of people and we want to give everyone who wants to have a comment a chance to make comments.
Thank you very much. I can assure.
We'll continue to take comments as we go through.
Hi.
May I say something? I thought we were going to be able to engage in a dialogue with the school committee. That's why,
Okay.
they had gotten back from.
Well, there's so many people that wanted to give the people who just wanted to make a comment first that chance, and yeah.
Hi, I can assure you my comments will be very short due to my age and a knee replacement surgery. First of all, my name is Peggy Schleicher. I live at 22 Lockwine Street in Winchester. I've lived in Winchester all of my life. I am a 1968 proud graduate of Winchester High School. My 3 children graduated from Winchester High School. My oldest was a lacrosse player, so I'm very fond of lacrosse people. And my younger 2 were pairs figure skaters, so their green field was a cold ice rink. I decided to attend tonight's meeting to raise a concern that I have, and I think I wanted to be first to say these things so that you can consider it in your conversations with the athletes and the other people here. My concern is about the use of the lights, and not about the use of the lights. I fully support that. I think that is appropriate and should be done. But my concern is rather about when the lights are turned on and off. It is my understanding that the sports groups will be urging a 10 p.m. lights out policy, and I ask you to consider a reasonable compromise to that request that turns out lights no later than 9 or 9:30 p.m. And let me explain. As you are aware, the policy on use of lights at Manchester Field calls for an 8:30 p.m. shut-off time. Now, I know that will be under review as lighting changes. But the only exception to that, and it is an exception, is when the high school needs to complete a high school varsity game that is MIAA sanctioned. And only at that point would you allow the lights to stay on past 10 p.m. So it's a special case, and it's not the ordinary rule. Why am I asking for this compromise? And I consider it a reasonable compromise. 2 reasons. One, first of all, as I said, I'm not an athlete. My children were, but I am not. But I speak as an educator. I work with first-year college students. And one of the things that we always spend a great deal of time talking about is finding balance in our lives. Now, high school athletes, I appreciate their enthusiasm for their sports, and I also know that their enthusiasm to be on this new lit artificial turf field is high, and I don't blame them. They've waited a long time for it. But there is a cost, and I'm not referring to financial. I am referring to what I call burning the candle at both ends. As the old saying goes, if you build it, they will come. And they will come to our new field because it is very desirable. But the more it is desired, the more people are going to ask to use it. But as an educator, I question the wisdom of encouraging student athletes to be out on our fields till 10 p.m. at night. If the proposal is for other organizations to use Skilling's Field at these late hours, I suggest that is not appropriate, and I could not support it. And I suggest that you question it as well. That field is under the jurisdiction of the school department. And as you know, this fall, the students will be starting later. You took a vote to do so based on data that suggested such a change was in the best interest of our students, and I support you in that decision. But if the school committee votes to allow lights on Skilling's Field until 10 p.m., I suggest that we may be doing not be doing what is best for our students in their academic success. As you know, you can't burn the candle at both ends and not pay a price. The athletes, the coaches, the booster club are all well-intentioned, and I admire their enthusiasm. But there is another voice that I think needs to be heard, and it's what I refer to as the voice of reasonable compromise. I want what's best for Winchester and its students, and I'd like the school committee to be that voice of reason to at least consider the consequence on the students' overall health, wellness, and academic fitness, which will be compromised if we allow them to burn the candle at both ends by encouraging late nights on the field. And the second concern I have is the negative impact on the abutting neighborhood. I do not live directly in that neighborhood. I live surrounding the McDonald Field neighborhood. But the reality in Winchester is that most of our athletic fields are pot-bound. They are surrounded and bordered by residential neighborhoods. The exception being Ginn Field, but that is owned by the DCR and run by the town of Winchester. And it does keep its lights on and is allowed to until 10:30 p.m. But I think neighborhood impact should be part of the planning process for hours of operation of lights that will intrude on this neighborhood's homes and their families. If lights are shut off at 10 p.m., that does not mean everyone who used the field will be off the field. You still have to consider the residual noise of car engines and conversations. So I thank the school committee for listening to my concerns tonight, and all I ask is that the school committee consider a compromise that offers greater protection for the student athlete. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peggy.
Susan, can you share for Peggy and speakers, they can leave comments with Frida if they'd like?
Right. Yes, if you have written comments and you'd like to leave them with us, that would be fine.
Could I just send this to you, Frida? Might have notes.
Could do that too. Is there anyone else who wants to make a brief? Okay, go ahead.
I got more space than Peggy. Good evening. My name is Paul Manganaro, and I live at 11 Pilgrim Drive in Winchester. And tonight I'm here representing the Winchester Field Development Council as their president. The Winchester Field Development Council is in support of option B, which is the 10 o'clock end time. And this is why. We believe it's already a compromise to the current town bylaws that allows its fields to be on until 11 o'clock. Number two, it allows ample time at the conclusion of use by high school programs for other groups such as many in-town youth groups to hold a practice or game. Number three, it helps fill the need for field space in town. Winchester is a town with a great demand for field space. Our high school has more athletic programs than 95% of other schools in the area. Our youth groups have grown in number of programs and enrollment over the years, as has our school enrollment. Number four, we applaud the decision by the school committee to push back the school start times for middle school and high school. Having lights that can meet the current field space need will allow us to keep many programs in town for practice and games. If not, programs will be forced to travel out of town, as they do now in many cases, and this would create an even later time for kids to get home and go to bed. We have programs right now, kids traveling to Acton, Boxborough, Medford, all around surrounding towns. A 10 p.m., number five, a 10 p.m. end time allows our town officials that will be handling the scheduling and rentals of our fields the proper tools to effectively do their job. Let's give them a policy that they can win with, not one that is set up for failure. And that's the conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else with a short comment? Or? All right. I was thinking we could start our discussion and then let, yeah. I figure some people want to have other things to do.
All right. Hi, I'm Carrie Curran of 11 Grayson Road in Winchester. Wanted to speak to you about why I fully support the need for lights on till 10 p.m. And I support them being on till 10 p.m. because I am agreeable to a compromise, and that compromise is on par with the current town zoning bylaws that actually do state 11 p.m. So I believe a fair compromise is 10 p.m. We, the town voters, approved and are currently building the turf field based on the need for longer playing seasons to support a growing population of student athletes across all abilities. That's youth and high school sports. Our reality is limited field space, and with the changing school start time, less availability will occur next year and in the years to come. The high school will have priority for the field until early evening, which addresses the later start time, given the later practice times and start of practice and game times. The strain on the field will continue with other fields also being prioritized by high school students across the town. While the children enjoy games over practice, conditioning has to occur in order for the fundamentals of their sport to be able to be taught to them, and more importantly, for them to avoid injury and have that practice time. You cannot overlook the importance of practice time and enough of the practice time. So I understand the youth sports are typically more 1 to 2 times a week, which could fill in those gaps later, but where the high school sports will predominantly dominate those fields until into the evening hours because of later start times and end times of school. Building the turf fields in town, having them lit, and then further limiting their availability to 1 hour of practice across the other youth sports that are willing and committed to using those fields does not maximize the true potential of the fields that we've all worked so hard to get in this town, and which has been fully supported by the majority of the voters in this town.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
I make
Yes.
comment? My name is Junli. I'm living in 12 Winter Street. I mean, we are very close to the field. I just ask one basic question. With the school year changed from next year, we will start at least like 30 minutes earlier. Considering the people live there, most kids, we have so many kids, and the kids are all, majority of them in primary school. So I just wonder, anybody considering them, they have to get up earlier next year, like 30 minutes earlier at least. And if you use 10 p.m. shut off the light, it couldn't guarantee all the noise gone. And the child just get the influence every night. So I just want you to consider this. And it's not very why. I just want to ask why only this field is allowed to go to 10 p.m., not other field. People get the same influence, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
My name is Jennifer Gurasi from Tremont Street, and I have lived my whole life in the winter, summer, Tremont, Cedar Street area. My family goes way back to 1880 when they settled at 810 Winter Street. The family has stayed there because we're loyal to our neighborhoods. We have Susan will present a list of all the residents of Winter, Summer, Tremont, and Cedar who have signed that what we would like is the intended lights for Skillings be on the same schedule as Manchester. This will be fairness to all. Ours is a very, very old neighborhood. As I said, 1880. My aunt lived there to 109 years of age, and she passed away in February of 16. We have had a lot of problems down there because it's a little nice, cozy compound. And what happens is you have a lot of people who come down there to sit and hide, whether they're doing illegal things. We've had to call the police on numerous occasions. Lights late at night will only increase problems. And we don't want problems. We realize there's a field there, but our neighborhood was there. As I said, my grandfather bought that property 1880. So my mother born there. We're all townies, born in the town. We just want to be treated fairly, and being treated fairly would be the same as being on the same schedule that Manchester. Whatever you allow for Manchester, we would most appreciate your consideration in treating the Skillings neighborhood the same way. We have many, many young children. They go to bed early. And you know the noise, how it can impact the noise from a field. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Susan?
Okay, so I have, I apologize that a lot of, let me sit down. First is first here. All right, I'm Susan Carney. I live at 9 Winter Street, and I've lived in the neighborhood since 1992. I apologize, a lot of the younger families couldn't be there tonight. We have 34 children under the age of 12. Parents are just getting home. They're getting the kids into bed. I have a petition from all those families that have signed that are in support of an 8:30 end time. I also have copies of my comments that I'll be making and pictures of how close the field is in close proximity. And some of them indicate that they show the older field. They do not show that how the turf field has been moved closer to our neighborhood. But they're Google Earth. You can kind of see what we're talking about. So I just have to lay out my stuff so I get it all together here.
Just go straight.
Okay. Sorry, I have an order. Okay. Okay. So thank you for letting us speak tonight, and I'm looking forward to an honest and open dialogue. The school committee tonight has the opportunity to set an important policy regarding lights at Skilling's Cha-Cha Field. Winchester has limited experience with lighted fields, but now is quite likely to have both Manchester and Skilling's Field lit, a potential boon to the town and even the neighbors. It is our belief that the two fields managed by the school committee should have similar or identical policies focused on advancing the health and well-being of our student athletes. The town set a precedent when the Manchester Field Light Policy was first put in place in 2014. Unfortunately, we have no practical experience with this policy in action because there has been no lights. But we, the neighbors of Skilling's Field, feel that this starting point represents a sound policy that has been well explored, balances the various needs of all constituents. We would like any Skilling's Cha-Cha policy to mirror the in-place Manchester policy. The points that view as most important are use for Winchester School and youth sports only. Current policy precedent, preserve availability for top constituents, respect for facilities and neighbors. Number 2, hours of use of lights on synthetic turf field. The current Manchester policy is 8:30. All drafts to the current version of Skilling's was for 8:30. The addition of the option B for a 10 p.m. shut-off time is very concerning. Winchester has no experience with lights, but has, over the past 4 years, debated and established a policy that is represented in the current Manchester revision. The best move for Winchester is to adopt a policy that meets the needs for neighbors and provides expanding playing time benefits that lights provide within reason. One of the primary arguments supporting the need for lighting the fields is a later start time for middle and high schoolers. That being said, we counteract that benefit if we allow for practice and games to run so late that it interferes with the completion of homework and sleep times of our student athletes. And number 2, we introduce noise into quiet residential neighborhoods where there are school-aged children, particularly, as in this case with the Skilling's Field neighborhood, there are 34 children that are elementary school age or younger, youth who will be seeing their school start time moving forward 35 minutes. Our neighborhood has no buffer from the field, and noise and lights, both direct from the field and indirect from the parking lots and sidewalks, carries and echoes loudly through our neighborhood. The fields themselves are green space, conservation land that directly abuts a quiet residential neighborhood. Whatever happens on the field should take into consideration the residents and families that are their neighbors. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 9 to 12 hours of sleep. With loud activity in the adjacent fields, this will be a challenge regardless of field light shut-off time for the 34 elementary school-age children or younger in our neighborhood. Even with an 8:30 shut-off, most young learners will be challenged to get the required sleep time, field-related lights, and noise delaying bedtime. A 35-minute earlier elementary school time will provide burdensome to many families, I know, potentially costing many an hour plus of lost sleep. The latest revised draft attempts to undo many of the good policy points that were in the draft last reviewed with the school committee on March 20th. Tonight's draft revision 5.1.18 strikes out many points that are important to the neighborhood, potentially removing the protections and good judgments that are needed. We strongly encourage the school committee to adopt a proposal that is similar across major points with draft 1.2315 shared on March 20th in this forum. Let's be reasonable. Let's start with a fair and consistent policy across both fields, Manchester and Skilling. They serve the same purpose and the same constituents. Let's preserve the quality of our neighborhoods, and let's implement a policy that focuses on our school and youth sports. Any accepted policy should be for the benefit of Winchester School and youth sports only. the lights should turn off at 8:30. This is the right policy for all Winchester and something we should be excited to benefit, should all be excited to benefit from. And what I want to say is, I'm not sure how we got here because, I mean, option B is that the lights are on Skilling Cha-Cha Field, can stay until 10 p.m., 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and that any organization can request a permit to use the lighted fields. Brian Soligroff and I met with the school committee on March 14th and March 20th to discuss the policies. Lights off at 8:30 and Winchester High School and youth sports only was on that policy. There was no discussion at that time by the school committee considering a 10 p.m. end time on the turf field. And what I want to say is, I have the two policies, and I guess for us, the most important points are an 8:30 end time and having only the Winchester Public Schools and Winchester Youth Organizations that can request the lighting and use of the field. School committee is, in this article dated Thursday, April 12th, they went on to say, we're, being our neighborhood, we are asking that the same consideration be given to the Cedar, Tremont, Winter, and Summer Street neighborhood that has been given to the neighborhoods adjacent to Manchester Field. The school committee hopes to vote on the Skilling's Field lights use policy in June. There was no indication that we would be looking at a 10 p.m. end time. The intent of the committee is to treat the Skillings and the neighborhood much in the same way we did Manchester, said Chris Nixon. So we just don't know what to say about that. And I do want to, we went back through all the old notes from January 18, and back on January 23rd, Mr. Area spoke to the need of, well, at that time they was talking about rentals, but he did say the lights would be used, so when they were rental lights, and I would think that would be the same for permanent lights, but he felt that the lights would be used from 3:30 to 5:30 first practice slots and 5:30 to 7:30 second practice slots. And then as a member of the policy subcommittee, Mr. Nixon stated currently that there is not a policy for lights. But it was discussed back. There was never a 10 p.m. end time mentioned. So I guess if I was going to say anything else, that everybody deserves, is that a message?
This looks like a coordinated message from the select board.
Talking. So, I do have to say, field rentals, if it's outside rentals, it brings in strangers from other towns. It's noise and light pollution, slamming of car doors, headlights, vibrations. We're way out there. I mean, wide open. And everybody deserves a quiet, peaceful neighborhood. I know, Ginn Field, they have this men's sports softball down there, and they play till 10 o'clock at night, and they hang around in that parking lot until 11 o'clock at night, socializing. And that could happen in our neighborhood if it's rented to outside groups or adult groups. So, and then after listening last night that Article 3 was passed, I know that was construction, but, they did bring up the same things about, noise and strangers and it all adds up. So thank you very much. I get so nervous. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope that the right decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. My name is Bill Harrison. I live on Tremont Street. As my sister mentioned, my family's been there since the 1800s. Okay? And, I recognize the fact, we want to have some nice things for our kids. There's a lot of interest in sports. But there's also a lot of people who don't care that much about sports. I'm one of them. And that's fine. Everybody has what they like, okay? But the fact of the matter is, in all the years I've been in this town, consideration has always been given to the neighborhoods and to the neighbors. And we are the people in that neighborhood who are going to be most impacted by your decisions, and especially the timing of the lights. I have been opposed to the lights since day one, but sometimes, you know, you have to accept it. But as far as lighting at 10 o'clock at night, that is absolutely ridiculous. Kids need time to play, but they need time to rest. The people who live in that neighborhood, you know, work for a living. I'll be 80 years old in 3 weeks. And every morning I'm up and I'm head to my office in Peabody. Okay? I have to get up and go to work too. I tell my wife I need the money, but it's just, it's nice to get away. But the fact of the matter is that people get up and go to work, you know, and some people like to go to bed at 9 o'clock. They like to go to bed at 8 o'clock. And you know fully well, you leave those lights on at 10 o'clock at night, and you know the kind of noise you're going to have and the disruption of the neighborhood. And that late at night, you attract a lot of undesirables. So I really think that you need to give some serious consideration to the neighbors down there. We don't need lights at 10 o'clock. You know, we're willing to accept them at 8 o'clock. But 10 o'clock, that is plain baloney. Thank you very much.
You're a plain speaker, sir. Mark, are you back there, Mark Aria?
He's in the shadows.
Are you, yeah. Would you like to join us since you're the AD and have some expertise on scheduling and stuff? Just you know.
I'm sorry.
You could speak, or you could just sit and be part of the discussion.
Do you want me to speak, or do you want to?
Whatever you
I've
prefer.
been listening from the back over there,
Okay.
tucked away. But yeah, so just in terms of speaking, in terms of our schedule and where we're at, I mean, you were pretty accurate with our practice slots and what I've said before, where, you know, now that we're getting out of school at 3:07, you know, our practice slots would be from 3:30 to 5:30 and 5:30 to 7:30.
Be off at around
We'd be
7:30.
off at 7:30.
Okay.
Which, you know, when you look at it from a rental perspective, and I've said this in the past, you know, teams will, in my opinion, organizations wouldn't rent for an hour. You know, they're probably looking for 2-hour minimums, 2.5 hours, you know, ideally, for practices or games. They're running multiple practices on, you know, our fields as it is. So I think in order to, again, in my opinion, if our fields aren't open, and I know we say that, you know, we obviously want our kids in town to go to bed early, and even the younger kids. But if we're not renting our fields, other towns are renting their fields to our kids. So they will be going outside of town, and they'll be up late regardless. Again, this, like I said, this is my opinion, but they will be up regardless of whether or not our field will be open. They'll be going outside of the town to rent fields, and potentially be up even later than if they were in town. So they're doing it now. So they're renting all the fields outside of town now.
Can I ask a question? I know others maybe want to speak, but on the subject of scheduling, Susan, when you talk about the 3:07, so that's Monday through Friday, can you just describe how you envision the Saturday, Sunday needs for fields for Winchester Athletics?
Sure. So Saturday, Sunday for the high school program, right now our Saturdays are in the morning, normally 8 to 10, 10 to 12, sometimes 12 to 2. And then on Sundays, we have a few teams that practice in the evening, so that they have the Sundays with their families, and then they practice from, you know, either 2 to 4 or 4 to 6, sometimes 5 to 7, depending on availability with you. We work with the youth programs to, our varsity coaches and youth programs work together to, you know, accommodate schedules sometimes, so.
Is there relatively little of that on Sunday, comparatively speaking?
Little of,
The practice time compared to a Saturday?
There's less practice time on a Sunday used
Yep.
than there is on a Saturday for the high school purposes, yes.
What about games?
Games, hardly ever do we have a game on a Sunday. You know, if we have to have a makeup game due to weather or, you know, extenuating circumstances, we will have a game on a Sunday, but that's maybe happened twice since I've been here. So, we do have games on Saturdays, though.
And could you sort of speak to how you envision Skilling's Cha-Cha working, because it's baseball and softball, you know, it's a different season than Manchester, or a different season than Knowlton, and, you know, you have the ability to use it for both softball and baseball, but not at the same time.
Yeah, so that's
how's
what.
that all going to work?
Yeah, so the plan right now is for in the fall, both soccer teams to practice at Knowlton Stadium, and the football and field hockey teams practice at the high school.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that rotates if there's a game, because we're still hosting all of our fall athletic contests at the stadium,
Yep.
at Knowlton Stadium. So if, say, field hockey's playing at the stadium, then soccer will practice at the high school, you know, before or after football, however the schedule is that particular week or that particular point of the season.
Yeah.
And then in the spring, baseball, softball will be at Cha-Cha, and both lacrosse programs will be at Knowlton Stadium. And because of the configuration of the field in the spring, baseball and softball can't practice at the same time. They'll be running into each other, and it's just
Yeah, no, I get
it
it.
wouldn't make sense. So, yeah, and the plan is for obviously equity reasons. We want one team to be able to practice early, you know, for half the season, the other team to practice early the other half of the season, and we'll do the same in the fall with both sports and both fields. So, you know, football will be practicing early half the year, field hockey half the year, and same at Knowlton with boys and girls soccer. So,
I was just trying to understand how having lights would give you more flexibility or not to use.
well, it gives us flexibility because for a good portion of the fall season, good portion of the spring season, it'll be dark before 7:30, and we'll need the lights in order to get a full practice in. So.
And do you imagine using them during the summer? I mean, would people be using Cha-Cha during the summer, since it's
People will be renting them. You know, if they're available, people will rent them. Organizations or, you know, youth programs or camps and clinics.
That's part of what we're trying to wrestle with. Is that we want to be, you know, consistent between the two fields, but they are different season sports. So, trying to understand how that works.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of like summer baseball and things like that.
Yeah.
Or you know, Yawkey League or men's league baseball, they'll play their games at, you know, if we're able to rent our field to those organizations, they'll start games at 7 o'clock at night, and they're not getting a game in an hour and a half. So we potentially lose that rental as well to other locations, just from strictly from a rental, you know, perspective.
That's
So
what we're
yeah.
trying to understand too. Okay.
Yeah.
Susan, can I ask the inverse question, though?
Yeah.
In the winter, the great thing about turf is you can put a snowblower on it. On the other hand, you don't know what the forecast is. So might there be a use for this turf field in the winter? What would that be? What would that look like?
I can answer that.
Anyone, yeah.
I rent it
Mr.
up.
Gill.
I rent it up until Christmas, during the fall. As long as there's no snow, I rent it up till Christmas.
Weather permitting, you can use it year round.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, people will.
For lacrosse, right?
Yeah.
In terms of Winchester athletics, you're not relying on it for summer.
For our high school
winter.
programs, for our high school programs, we will not need it in the winter.
Yeah, great.
So then those outside programs could run it earlier than they would in the other seasons as well?
Sure. So a lot of times what happens is college lacrosse programs, college softball, baseball programs are always looking for turf fields in the area because of the fact that it's New England and fields aren't ready yet.
Right.
So there's a high demand in, you know, late February, early March before the spring season, before the high school spring season starts, where college programs in the area rent those fields.
But would they be able to get on the fields like at the 3 o'clock time then, because we're not using them then?
Potentially, yeah, absolutely. We won't be using them, so.
Good point.
So if you can stay around, that would be helpful. I
Sure.
wanted to ask, give other people, all right, one more.
Quick
One more.
clarification.
Yeah.
Moving a little bit aside to the warrant article, which says that the field use is scheduled for until 7 p.m. You're saying it's actually would be 7:30 p.m. I just wanted to clarify whether it's 7 p.m. or 7.
No, it is 7:30. The high school will be using till 7:30.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry about that. That's a good clarification. Okay. If there are people who haven't spoken yet, I would like to give them a chance and then wrap up this comment period.
Susan, will we be asking after this, our questions?
Yeah.
But it isn't.
Good evening. My name is Rich Mackenzie, and I'm the president of Sachem. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm president of Sachem Youth Baseball and Softball. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of option B, which is to keep the lights on till 10 o'clock. My opinion is based on the history of the lights at Westside Field. Sachem Youth Baseball and Softball gifted the lights in December of 1999. That's close to 20 years ago, and we are allowed to use the lights until 10 o'clock p.m. Those lights are actually manufactured by Musco, which is the same company that will be supplying the lights for Skilling's Field. As you know, Westside Field is nestled in a residential area. Since there's very little spillage from the lights, we've only had a few complaints from our neighbors, and actually those complaints were actually due to the reason that we left the lights on overnight. We've since resolved that problem. We've always done our best to work with the neighbors. And again, I think that we have a clear and strong history that we have had no issues with the lights being on until 10 o'clock p.m. So I've heard a lot of discussion that, you know, are lights on anywhere else in town? And clearly the answer to that is yes, and you can look to our field for that. In addition to my role as president, I actually manage a senior Babe Ruth team in the summer. That team is comprised of boys that are ages 16 to 19. We usually begin to play in June, and our season ends in early August. Every year we travel to Cambridge, we travel to Malden, we travel to Arlington, and we travel to Woburn. And the reason we do that is so that we can play our home games under the lights. We have a lot of young men that have day jobs. They can't get out of their day job until 5:30, and it's virtually impossible for them to make a game at 5:45. So fortunately, the other towns have allowed us to use their fields, and I think it would be nice to have an opportunity for these young men to play in Winchester, where actually their families could come and see a game, because often they're rushing from their employment as well. So again, I think there's strong precedent for the lights being on till 10 o'clock, and I'd ask you to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Bless you.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to back up. My name is John Siciliano. I'm a resident on Wildwood Street, 99 Wildwood Street, which our backyard backs up to the New Tile complex, and we moved to the house in 2004, and honestly, I didn't even notice the lights, I don't think, until our kids started playing baseball, and we're over there a lot now, and I can, they're on till 10 o'clock, but it's not a nuisance. They shine. If you look for them, you could see them, but it's certainly not something that's distracting. It doesn't keep us up at night. It doesn't keep our kids up at night, certainly, and it didn't when they were young. So, I wasn't around when those lights went in, but soon thereafter, and we've certainly never had an issue, and I don't think many of our neighbors, it's not something that's talked about in the neighborhood as a nuisance, and it's actually a great place for families to gather in the evening, and the fact that the lights are on keeps the people together longer, and it's good. It's a nice place for kids to be when, you know, at night, you know where they are, they can walk there, and it extends that social time for them. So I'm very much in support of being able to do the same thing with the Skillings lights, and can, you know, say as a neighbor, it's not been an issue for us. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marty Mahoney. I'm the president of Winchester Soccer Club. I'm here to speak on behalf of the lights in Option B. I'm here supporting Option B. The lighting at Skillings, certainly 10 p.m. is a compromise based on the current rule. It maximizes the usage of the fields. It reduces the burden on the grass fields in town. It's also a potential revenue source for the town, and it's in the best interest of the school and of the town and the youth of Winchester. It's the lack of adequate field space, and specifically turf, that led Winchester Soccer Club to build our own facility off of Cross Street, which we're nearly completed, should have completed by the end of this year. We have the ability to keep the lights on actually after 10 o'clock. We, up until this point, on our external field, have kept it on until 10 o'clock, and we've been doing that for over 18 months now, and we've done that without any objection or complaints from the local residents, and we're right across the river from Morocco School. And we have men's teams playing until 9:30, 10 o'clock a couple nights a week, as well as practices of our club teams going till 9:30. So we spend, the other thing is that Winchester Soccer Club spends tens of thousands of dollars each year renting field space from other towns in the area. Medford, Arlington, Somerville, and each of those towns allow their turf fields to be open with lights until 10 o'clock. So this would be stoppage time at 8:30 would be inconsistent with those towns, and that revenue stream would then go to continue going to those towns instead of coming to Winchester. It's also, so it limits the ability to generate money. It's also inconsistent with some of the other sports. I've heard the arguments in terms of children going to bed earlier, and putting aside the field sports, like many parents in town, I coach other sports other than soccer. And for over the last 5 years, I've coached basketball teams. And this past winter, I coached an 8th grade boys basketball team, and our practices were 8 o'clock to 9:30 at night, twice a week. So it's not just the field sports that are practicing after 8:30. It's also the indoor sports as well. And that I've coached now 3 of my sons in their 8th grade basketball over the last 5 years, and each of their practices was twice a week until 9:30. So limiting the field lights until 8:30 is not going to prevent kids from practicing after 9 o'clock. And several of our club teams also practice after 9 o'clock at night, whether it's in Winchester at our field or at some of the other fields. So I do encourage the school board to vote in favor of keeping the lights on until 10 o'clock. I do think it's a benefit financially to the town. I don't think it's a burden on the youth in town. I think it'll be a benefit to the town. Thank you.
So I appreciate you all coming, and you're welcome to stay, but given the time, we need to get on with our discussion here. And I did take the liberty of putting together some slides, just since we're talking about fields. It's kind of useful to have a diagram. I did.
Yeah,
You guys
just go to the next.
have a slide that shows the Chacha facility. Yes.
The vice chair of the finance committee is in the hallway with some other attendees tonight. Apparently you can hear very well from the hallway. I'm impressed.
I'm sorry, they're
He is happy to share the FinCom position on this if we are so inclined. Just want to be sure you got that message.
I don't. Thank you. I mean, I don't think that really bears on the policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I hope I don't know how well this is going to display, but this is from a few months ago. VHB is the town's consultant working on the whole Skillings remediation and culvert project. And so this is the entirety of Skilling's, which is, I think, about 9 acres or more. And it shows the proposed, or the Cha-Cha synthetic turf baseball, softball facility. As this is not exactly where it's being built. This is a preliminary drawing, but it shows that, that it's a sort of on the southern part of the field, closer to Skilling's Road, and then the end of the field is sort of around the same spot as the end of the parking lot there on that side, and then there's
And that's the high school parking lot.
the high school parking lot.
Where are the
and-
houses in the picture?
And then there's the field, the grass fields are about 300 feet or so on the northern part of there. And then the property line it's hard to make out, but that sort of step, I think something that looks like a step on the top perimeter,
Vanna.
that's the,
You can be Vanna.
that's the property line, and the houses are on the other, are along there, yeah, around there. Although there are probably houses to the right, right. All the way across, yeah.
All the way across, yeah.
Right, I'm sorry, but that's the street.
Winter Street.
That's a street along there, right?
All the way to all the other side of Summer, it's all houses.
Summer
Correct.
goes right into the field.
Okay. True enough.
You want
All
the
right,
next slide?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you don't see the whole extent of the neighborhood, but that's where they are. That's where they start. That's where they start. Okay. Fair enough. And then this shows the locations of the 8 light poles that are being built that are around the turf facility, the softball, baseball facility. And you can see there, it's not like we're putting lights on the entirety of the field. The lights are focused in on the softball and baseball turf that's being built. And then the next one is from Musco, which is a very reputable maker of field lighting and who's supplying the lights for this project. And it's a diagram, it's a prediction, but it is designed to show in foot candles the illumination at the field level of all of the various lights. And you probably can't see, but up along the top, all of these little black numbers showing the illumination at the field level are all zeros. So the light spillage, once you get 20, 30 feet, 40 feet away from the baseball, softball facility, will be very, very minimal.
So the gentleman I see in the back, who are
Yeah.
gonna hit a lot of home runs. It's gonna be dark out there.
Well,
Please
it
caution.
might be dark out there.
Can I ask a quick, while we're on the lights, can I just ask a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
clarifying question? You had said you were using Musco lights on the
Yes.
west side field as well?
Yes.
So, and you're finding the similar light bleed there, that it's illuminating just the field and not beyond?
Absolutely. In fact, we have a snack bar that's probably less than 50 feet from center field, that's clearly in the dark.
So you'd have to actually light that separately if you wanted light on
That's
that?
right.
Okay.
So this, they will be visible from the neighborhood, but they are some 300 feet away, and they are designed to focus downwards for the most part. And this has been something that's developed over the years. It's also LED lighting, which is relatively new, and I think might be similar to what they have at the Winchester Soccer Club project.
Excuse
Just
me
as
one
an
second.
illustration. Yes, sir.
You're talking about the impact of the lights, but
I
you're
know.
not mentioning the impact
Sound.
of the noise when you have people down there at
That's
10
true.
o'clock at night. And that
Good-
is
good point.
one of the things in the neighborhood that we are extremely concerned about.
That's a good point, well taken. I understand.
Thank
So, this was something that came up, I think, in the earlier discussions. We were trying to figure out how much of the existing Manchester policy made sense to bring over for Skilling's and Cha-Cha, and whether, and to what extent we should tailor the rules for Skilling's Cha-Cha based on the characteristics of that field and the use that the field that it would have. You know, there's consistency, and then there's, you know, real valid real world differences between the two locations. So I think the discussion of this new version originated with the policy subcommittee. So I think Michelle wanted to sort of tee this up for us to
and
get the draft
I
out.
wanted to talk a little bit because I heard from a number of the residents in the neighborhood as well as from the people from youth sports, sort of different ideas about where this should go and how it should look in the end. And we did start, I'd like to talk a little bit just briefly about how we got to the point to have an option B, because I think that was a little bit of a surprise to the neighbors. And I think when the policy subcommittee originally started, we did start from the Manchester policy because honestly, because that's what we had in our policy manual for us. There was, Mr. Nixon was part of the school committee when the Manchester policy was written and felt that that was a good place for us to start from. But as we progressed through thinking about the policy and we started to consider all the stakeholders that would be involved in it, the neighbors, the high school sports, the youth sports, and also the revenue generation, which can help with maintaining the field for the high school and moving forward. We began to sort of rethink the policy, the Manchester policy, and try to evolve it to something that would really meet the needs of many different stakeholder groups. That's how we went back to the drawing board again and began to speak to just different people in coming to that point. You know, the Manchester policy as it exists has never really been tried. It was a policy that we wrote back before I was on school committee, but there were no lights imminently on a field at that point. We're reaching a point where we will be putting lights on fields. If not tomorrow, next year, the year after, the lights will be coming on our fields.
Excuse me, Michelle,
Yeah.
can I just add something to that? Didn't
Sure.
interrupt, but I think it's important. Again, from the Winchester Field Development, we're scheduled to go in front of the select board on May 21st to gift the Manchester lights. It's not public knowledge right now.
Right.
We're gonna gift those. I think you're 100% accurate there. That Manchester policy was just sitting on a piece of paper for 4 years now. I think from your discoveries, you found out more information. I probably should revise the Manchester policy also, because it's never been tried, and the data that we have today is a lot different than we had 4 years ago. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Yep.
So then we went and we looked at the use of that field, that it was the primary field was a baseball, softball field with a practice field on it. So we also looked at similar fields in town, and we did find that there were town bylaws that permit lights to be on fields until 11 o'clock at night. And we looked at fields that were currently in use. And the fields that are currently in use with lights on them, again, New Tile do allow their lights on till 10 p.m. And we found through discovery, as has been mentioned, that there just hasn't been, to this point, a lot of neighborhood complaints or issues with those lights being on until 10 p.m. And so that is how we sort of arrived at presenting an option B here to school committee for discussion, because we thought it was important to look at that option. It would provide a revenue generation that the 8:30 time simply is not going to provide us. And based on the current bylaws and other actual usage that we see in town, that could make sense for us if we decide to go that way.
So can I weigh in?
Yeah.
On Michelle's last point, when we start talking about revenue generation, I start to get a little uncomfortable, because I feel like that is probably more appropriate. In some ways, it obviously applies to Article 32, but, you know, as we've said before, we're not in the business of running a pool. We support the idea of having a pool on Skillings Field, and are we really in the business of renting lights? The reason why the revenue piece is important is because artificial turf is expensive, so it needs to be maintained, and there needs to be a plan for replacement. So, you know, hence the interest. If, as we get into this discussion tonight, if there's any more interest in understanding that revenue generation piece, I might, again, encourage, if the representative from FinCom has information to share that might be appropriate, but maybe we don't get there tonight. I would just respectfully say that, so Michelle and I are both on the subcommittee. If we had been in agreement, we probably would not have brought two options tonight. So this was kind of a compromise. And I'll speak to that in a minute. But since I was on the committee, as Michelle said, back in 14 or 15, when Paul and the Winchester Field Development Council came forward looking to raise money for Manchester Field, I want to give a little history and context here. As I believe I recounted to the school committee, that was a conversation that started late in the summer. I think it went 3 or 4 months. We engaged that whole Manchester community. But there were representatives of this community around Skilling, some of whom are here tonight, who also attended those meetings and asked, what about us? Because there was, I think, even in the context of that discussion, a realization that someday lights at Skilling's would happen, and in fact, Skilling's might be next. There wasn't a whole lot of interest in really talking about that in a really concrete way because the next flood mitigation project was the 4th culvert under Skilling's. We're not going to put in lights at Skilling's if we're going to tear up the field to manage our stormwater. So it seemed like a long way away, and yet right now as I sit here, those discussions in 2014 and 15 feel like they happened yesterday. So it was requested by representatives of this very community at the time that we treat them and Skilling's Field in the same manner that we were treating Manchester. I feel like we made that commitment. I certainly did personally, so I'm a man of my word, and that's kind of how I approach this whole issue. That's sort of my starting point. It's fair to say, and Michelle may have mentioned this earlier, that was another committee. So Massachusetts general laws are clear. One school committee can't bind another. What a school committee did or didn't do in 2014, frankly, has no bearing. This is a different committee, especially after the spring election just a few weeks ago. So, with that comes new perspectives and new thoughts. So where we did start, as Michelle said, was to go back and look at the Manchester policy, given some of the similar concerns that had been there. I want to be clear about some things we did agree on. So the last time this policy appeared before the school committee, it was called the Skilling's Field / Char Field lighting policy. And to the diagram Susan put up earlier, I think there was some confusion and ambiguity that the way even that was written, it would apply to the entirety of the parcel, did you say 9 acres? Yeah. So because, as Michelle says, we're at a point now where there is an imminent project, and it's not to put lights at the back of Skilling's. It's these 8 poles over the artificial turf. I think the subcommittee was well-intentioned to say, let's focus this policy, and we've done that. So this literally only applies to lights at the artificial turf and nothing more. To the issue of, if I can just continue then on some of our changes, we heard some, so I think what I'm hearing from some of the representatives is 2 key concerns. One is the timing of the lights. The other is who's using the fields, Winchester students and Winchester youth groups. I should be clear that although there is this section here, I believe it's section 3, in which that reference says only Winchester Public Schools and Winchester youth organizations may request lighting. The reason that's both struck out and italicized was that we said this is something we should bring back to the school committee and talk about. Because my sense is here, a couple of issues are intertwined. Because we have such a real shortage of field space for our students, I believe that if we have even an hour and a half of lit field space, someone will use it. But I can also appreciate in the financial analysis, if lights are on later, there's the opportunity for more revenue generation. But if the lights are on later till 10 o'clock, it seems to me, and maybe Margaria has a gut sense of this, it seems to me we would almost need to be relying more on either outside sports affiliated groups or adult league groups to grab some of that late time. If we're really going to maximize the revenue generation of a field, then it makes sense to open it up. So I almost imagine whether we were to open that field up to groups other than students or Winchester youth groups, it feels to me like that should be in some way tied to the timing issue, just as a practical matter. I also just wanted to highlight, we heard about compromise tonight. So to be very clear with everyone, the policy that's already been voted for Knowlton Stadium over at Manchester Field is clear. No permits will be issued for any use of lights during the winter or summer, and no lighting on Sunday. So the draft policy that we have before us kind of contemplates some new things. The subcommittee is proposing to eliminate the whole distinction of the 4 seasons. And why would we do that? Well, because in fact, it may be appropriate, given that this is a softball, baseball, multi-use field. This is not a football field. It may be appropriate, in fact, to have lights on in the summer. Appropriate to have lights on in the winter, as you heard from Mr. Gill. Private groups interested in renting it, even if we don't have Winchester athletics there. So I think almost as a baseline, what the subcommittee is suggesting is, not 2 seasons, but 4. And I also wonder if, in other words, Susan, we're not restricting as we are with the Manchester policy. That may be a point to consider. And then also, I just wonder, and maybe this is a point for us to begin to discuss tonight. I did not hear from the community specific concerns around days of the week. I heard concerns about timing. And the questions that, I had questions from Mr. Aria about Winchester athletics on Sunday, because the current Manchester policy says no lights on Sunday. And I struggle with that on this field because I think about the substantial investment and frankly the need to kind of maintain and recoup the cost. Last thing I just want to say, having posed that question, is I want to put in sort of a plug for the proposal. Some people have said, well, why is it so much money and why do you need 8 poles? We have, I think, 4 proposed at Manchester. I want to be clear with everyone here tonight. Musco is lighting fields like this in other locations, other states, with 4 poles. And the reason they're able to do it is they're sort of cranking those light fixtures up and they're throwing the light across the field. It may seem counterintuitive. More poles doesn't mean more light spillage. In essence, having more poles means that light can really be focused down on the field, which I applaud, but it also means it's a more expensive project. Therefore, the need to try to find ways to offset the cost and maintain the lights in the field. So I would suggest as an opener tonight, when we talk about ways in which this may deviate from a Manchester policy, can we at least talk about opening it up to all seasons? Can we consider lighting on a Sunday? And be respectful of the community concern around the 8:30 cutoff. And having proposed that, I again would remind, for those who weren't here for our last school committee debates, this is just a school committee policy. We have a process to change policy. The 8:30 time that we do have in place for Manchester was also a compromise. Certainly, there were folks who wanted to have them on later. Community wanted to have them off earlier, or maybe only on 3 or 4 days a week. And it was our understanding back in 2014, 2015, that we could vote a policy that the Winchester Field Development Council could then go to its supporters and say, well, the school committee, select board, management's on board with this. They support lights on our artificial turf fields. They raise the money, we get the lights up, and we see how it goes. And it was understood then, just as I think it's understood now. I would treat Skillings no differently. Whatever we vote tonight, whatever we ultimately agree to, I see as sort of it's a step in a process. Let's get the lights up. Let's see how they work. Let's get the feedback from the community. And if there is a compelling reason to go back and revisit whatever decision we land at tonight, I think there's a process to do that. And I don't think that would be inappropriate, actually. I think we'd be more informed to do it that way.
So, in the interest of moving things along a little bit, and there's been a lot of talk about a compromise, I'm wondering if the way to go is to sort of, I know we have opened it up to the entire year with no distinctions as to seasons, but what if we were to reintroduce that in a modified form, since it is baseball, softball, and we have this Babe Ruth League, and we have various people who would be using the fields in the summer later. If we could maybe contemplate having 10 o'clock be the shut-off time in the spring and summer, and then during the school year, maybe a little earlier, like, say, 9:30. Seems like the timing is the most contentious issue. And if we want to maybe move it a little earlier during the school year because of the many neighbors with elementary age, young children, I mean, that's just kind of intuitively what seems to make sense for me. And that, revenue is a secondary consideration to me. We, you know, we're putting the lights on here because we have a shortage of field space, and you can use the field longer when you have lights. And I want to see people be able to use the field primarily. So I just throw that out there. I can't make a motion, I'm the chair, but I think there's a way to do this and be respectful of the neighbors to the north, and also be sure that we get the maximum use out of this town asset that's going to be a great asset. So.
Is it open for us now?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
I'm very confused because
Yeah.
isn't Stop and Shop literally across the street from Cha-Cha? And isn't that lit 24 hours a day? So here the people are.
in their parking lot.
You don't have the noise.
Well, okay, let me get to the lights now. The zeros, it's saying that light will not go beyond that. People using Cha-Cha Field are not gonna park all the way across Skillings to use Cha-Cha. There's parking near the Diamond, correct?
190 spaces.
There's a train track that's also lit all night. I don't understand the impact in terms of people using the neighborhood when it's so far apart. Parking is near the baseball diamond, and you already have a parking lot that is lit 24/7.
Not as far as you think if you live there, number one. Number two, where do you think this revenue that you're taking in is gonna offset the extra wear and tear on the field, that it's gonna have to get replaced 3 years down the road instead of 6 years or whatever? The surface is gonna get destroyed twice as quick, because you wanna
Okay.
rent it out to colleges. You
Okay.
think these
Okay.
kids care
Well,
what
thank you.
cleats they're wearing? They're gonna come in, rip it up, throw their beers, their water bottles. I pick up all the trash out there. None of you
Thank you.
people come and pick up the trash that these people leave.
Okay.
I do.
This is a select board issue,
Okay,
trash
thank you.
pickup, but
Yeah.
thank you.
And I know there are a lot of impacts.
Heavy use of the turf field, wasn't that accounted for when we voted for the turf field? So that heavy use, what does that mean, and does it actually impact the life of the turf field? Does it shrink it to less than 10 years?
So increased wear and tear certainly shortens a life of a field. And in fact, Mr. Linsky's last admonition to the school committee at his last school committee meeting, where I guess we were talking about this, was to remind the committee that when we voted the Manchester policy, the expectation was not that it would be lit at every night until 8:30 and used every night until 8:30, although, to be clear, the policy absolutely permits that. No doubt. And then, as a resident mentioned tonight, MIAA games can go till 10. There was certainly a lot of community interest around this idea of the Friday night lights. So, however, this philosophy may have evolved, since then. We have more students. We talk about the short supply we have of field space. So the policy is what the policy is. But Mr. Linsky's point was that if we were to light these fields, 7 days a week and keep them on late and use the fields late, then to the gentleman's point, that would certainly shorten the life of it would just step up the need for field replacement and maintenance. Not that it means it can't be done.
Okay, I've heard
With regular maintenance, even with heavy use, you expect 10 years of life. And the warranty on the turf field is 8 years from the date of first use. So even with heavy use, it's warranted for 8 years.
And isn't there a warranty for, then the lights themselves, they're LED, they turn on instantly, they turn off instantly, correct? So 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock, it's not like they take a million hours to dim, correct?
Correct.
So, and then this map again is saying that there's no light bleed into the neighborhood itself.
Right.
Thank you.
Any thoughts?
So I do have some thoughts. I think it's important, the financial assessment, even though we have not asked FinCom to come over here. The reason I think it's important is that they supported the article, not the policy. It's a separate issue.
Right.
And they showed that it would be able to fund itself even if the lights turned off at 8:30. At least that's what was conveyed to me. So the reason I say I think it's important is because I think that there would be obviously incremental income if we keep the lights on till 10, but the debt service, my understanding is the debt service on the borrowing will be sufficient. Their estimation is with the lights going off at 8:30. So I just think that's important, that extra money is obviously lovely, but either of these policies will fund the debt service. At least that's my understanding. With that in mind, I'm strongly in favor of trialing this at the earlier time, at the 8:30 time, which is consistent with what we have at Manchester, and see what the impacts on the neighborhood are. See what the trash impacts are, see what the noise impacts are. We'll know whether 8:30 is the right time, or as if the first speaker came in and said maybe a compromise, maybe 9 is the right time. My gut feeling is 10 is not the right time, because I think that some people speaking here tonight are correct. 10 does not mean people leave at 10. We can have the policy be that people leave at 10, but especially if it's an adult game taking place that's renting there, there are going to be people there till 10:30, maybe 11. We know that any meeting you've ever been at after town meeting, I was at town meeting for an hour after town meeting ended.
Who were you talking to?
I might have been talking to you, but
Lights are on. Lights are on.
So it's not that I'm saying that 10 p.m. I think 10 p.m. is too late. 9 p.m. might not be too late. 9:30 might not be too late. I'd rather trial it at 8:30 and see where we go from there. I think it's consistent with the policy at Manchester. I think it's consistent with what past boards have represented. Obviously, we are a new board. 2 of us are very new, but I think that some amount of consistency, that when one board says something, the next board obviously can change their mind entirely. But we do like some consistency, so I would like to see it off at 8:30 and get the section that says back MIAA sanctioned games,
Yeah, we
but end
need
no
that.
later than 10. Obviously,
Yeah, we have to have that,
Obviously,
yeah.
we'd have to have that back, and I think I'd hope the neighborhood would understand that games going till 10 would make sense if there were a MIA sanctioned game, but the practices would be off by 8:30, and then come back and revisit this after a year of use. That would be my feeling.
You had
Can I
something
just
to
say
add, yeah.
something? And I know FinCom said, you know, theoretically, if we could rent for an hour every night, then it could pay for it, you know, it could
The
pay for
debt
itself.
service,
Could
yeah.
generate the revenue needed, but we won't get, again, my opinion, I like to think I know a little bit about this, you know, rental schedules and things like that, is that we won't get the rentals. People won't rent the field consistently, on a consistent basis for an hour. There's just not enough time for even youth teams,
Yeah,
and they can give their opinions as well. They're not gonna rent the field for an hour. They need more time. So,
Susan?
And
And before we move on, I just want to respond to Brian quickly, and then I
Yeah,
know
okay.
Mr. Gill had something he's
Yeah, yeah,
been
yeah.
waiting patiently to chime in with. I would absolutely agree with you, Brian, that 8:30, you're saying based on the Manchester, if we had tried the Manchester field plan, and if there was a precedent, I think the precedent that exists in town for lighting fields is a 10 p.m. precedent. I think we do have data, and we do have information on whether that works, whether there have been noise complaints in the town, whether there have been tremendous trash complaints. And my understanding is that simply isn't happening on a consistent basis for fields that are currently lit. And I'm a data person. I like to go out and find the people who are actually experiencing something and find out what they're experiencing already and use that to inform my decision as well. And what I'm hearing from neighbors around those fields that are already lit is that it's really a working policy, and then put that together with all the information that we have. So if we had tried Manchester and it was lit already to 8:30, and we knew that that was really working for us, working for the teams, problematic, but I'm hearing too many other issues around only keeping the lights on till 8:30 that makes me hesitant to say that 8:30 is a good time to try. I would rather try 10 and scale ourselves back.
Can I
Or
just-
something later than
just
8:30.
Also point out, in the real world, at 8:30 in the summer, it's not even really dark
Right.
all the way.
Good point.
And it's a
Maybe
baseball.
the compromise could be later in the summer. But I would like to say something, if that's okay.
Actually,
Mr.
Mr. Gill's been
Okay,
waiting.
Mr. Gill's been waiting, and he didn't speak before either, so.
My name's Patrick Gill. I live at 32 Nathaniel Road. I'm on the field committee. I worked on the policy as well, way back in 2014, 2015. Yes, that policy was there for 8:30 because it was a compromise that we could try to get the lights on the field. As we know, things have changed since then. Start time of the school is guaranteed to start this September, pushing everything back an hour. So to me, it wouldn't make sense to keep that policy at 8:30. I could tell you from Winchester Youth Lacrosse, who just is going to write a check this spring for $28,000 to the town that goes to the revolving fund, that we will not rent the field if we can't only rent it for an hour. It's a waste of time. So that would be gone right away. Last year, $50,000 came from rentals from just town sports. It went into the revolving fund. Now, the FinCom did say that they would pay for the debt exclusion if they could keep it till 8:30. But ironically, this is the one project that has seemed to, the town has said to us, you have to find a way to replace it, which we've tried to take that challenge on and try to respect everybody's opinion, including the neighbors. By the way, I do live over by Cross Street, so I have those lights on my house till 11. There's 36 homes there. There's 38 kids from middle school and younger. There's no noise, and the lights do not shine in our neighborhood. But I understand your concerns, and I'm not trying to minimize those. But what I'm trying to say is we've been put forth to try to come up with a policy to help alleviate the cost to replace the turf, which Manchester's going to come quicker than Skilling's, as we know. Taking $50,000 because you're not going to allow us to rent the turf till whatever time, 9:30, 10, whatever that time frame would be, I think it's a big mistake and try to, to generate revenue to take the edge off of trying to replace the turf that could be replaced, from what I've been told, 3 or 4 years. I think we could extend it out a little bit, but 3 or 4 years, Manchester, we could be looking at it. So we want to try to get as much money from both turf fields to try to replace one of them, and then work on, preparing for the next field too. Now that's been a town mandated option for us that we've had to try to provide. So that's why we're trying to, to rent it as much as possible. So you guys understand, youth sports, they're going to start now at 7:30. We're starting at 6 now. So, it doesn't make any sense to try to rent it for an hour, because it's going to take a while for, high school sports to get off, whether they have a meeting or whatever, they try to get off, but some days they can't get off because 2 games ran late, what have you. So I just find it's important for us to not, 8:30 was a policy that was made before we decided to move the start time back an hour. And I don't think that that's necessarily, so push everything back at least and then decide from there. I think it makes sense. But
Excuse me, question?
thank you.
So I think we need to wrap up the public participation.
I don't understand if the school committee's mandate is to be in a rental business and renting out fields to generate income, or whether they're to meet the needs that the athletic director talked about to practice until 7:30.
Right.
So I'm feeling that I'm hearing 2 totally different things going on.
It's the town of
The rental-
Winchester that's asked us to
Okay,
do that,
thank
not the
you.
school.
All right,
rental
okay.
business, and the original intent for doing lights on the field was because we were told that there was not enough time for the kids to practice.
Okay.
And we're hearing that kids practice from, the high school kids only need till 7:30. So.
There's
and all-
4,500 middle school and elementary school.
Well, they're not gonna
Okay,
practice
guys.
at 10 o'clock at night.
Guys,
They're doing high
guys,
school. They're doing
okay.
hockey.
Okay, guys, this is a school committee meeting, and you're welcome to be, as members of the public, stay here, but you can't be having an argument amongst yourselves. And we need to get on with our meeting and our deliberation, and I just have to say it's been long enough, and public comment is now over. And I think you already made a comment, sir, so.
Well, I'd like
that's
to
it.
comment about something else. There are no bathrooms on the field, so when the high school kids use the field, they can go in the high school to go to the bathroom. When you rent it out to people, we've had soccer people out in
Okay,
the field
yeah.
that urinate, defecate, and change their clothing on the field, because there's no bathroom or field house for them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Duly noted. All commentary is closed. Thanking you all again for your patience earlier and for providing your opinions and your perspective, and we are really trying to take everything into consideration. But we need to move on and hear a recommendation maybe from the superintendent, and maybe have a motion and decide what this policy is going to be, at least for now.
Sure, sure. Briefly, I think, this is a community decision. This is a community resource. All our schools belong to everyone in this room and all of the residents who live in town. All of the fields belong to all of you and everyone who lives in town and your children. And so, for me, it's not a matter of revenue, it's not a matter of rental, it's a matter of community access for everyone from our youngest residents to our oldest residents, and trying to come up with a policy that will accommodate as much use as is reasonable to respect the rights of the neighbors to enjoy their property, but to understand that this is a facility that's going to be funded by the taxpayers, and that it should be used by residents as often as possible, as is reasonable into the evening as is possible. And I think that it's important to recognize that it's primarily a baseball, softball field and a multipurpose field, and that the grass fields will not be lit and will not be used in other seasons with lights. The athletic director has told me there's no intent to light those fields. So it seems to me that the experience that Michelle talked about with other fields having lights on till 10 without major issues should guide your decision making around this. My recommendation would be to follow the same guidelines that the other fields have in town, and that is lights till 10. And then listen to residents and work closely with the select board, because as Zena pointed out, issues around parking, which I think the select board is willing to entertain in the neighborhood, issues around trash, issues around police presence, I think are all important. Having had experience in other districts with turf fields and in rental of turf fields, we were able to have a revolving fund where we put a few $100,000 aside for the replacement of the turf field through the rental. But we were also able to hire people to supervise the field and manage the field. And so I think it's incumbent upon either the rec department or the school district that if we have non-school folks there, Mr. Rhea takes care of the school folks, that we have a provision for supervision of that field to ensure that people are on and off on time, that trash is picked up, and that public safety officials are brought if there are violations. And so my recommendation would be to consider building into the cost structure, once we know how much rental we have, more supervision for the site to ensure that it's managed properly. So I think the 8:30 time was set before school start times changed. It is my strong preference not to have our youngest kids out after 8:30 at night. I'd like to see shorter practices, and I know people will travel outside of town on travel leagues and get home even later. I have mixed feelings about that. I'd like to see it more heavily used in the summer and on weekends, and would encourage that instead of late nights. And so I'm hopeful that with 2 turf fields, and we're just so blessed by the generosity of the donors for the Knowlton Field, that it will reduce some of the pressure we have. Mr. Rhea has done a heroic job with no fields, but our kids, our high school kids, have had to play on fields outside of Winchester for so many years. It's time for them to play in their own town where their parents can watch them. And this is a community resource, but we have to respect the rights of all members of the community, including the neighbors, and listen carefully when they come back to us and raise issues, if we try it open until 10 and it raises concerns. So that's my recommendation as superintendent, and I think we really just need to see how it goes, as Mr. Nixon said, that any policy can be revised at any time, and really keep the lines of communication open about it. So that's my recommendation.
In that regard, can I make the motion? Does it have to say option B, or is policy
No,
FI?
no, whatever you want to say.
No, I mean, do we have to include the option number, or is FI including one or the other?
I think you would have to say
Which option? Okay. I move to approve.
as presented, option B.
I move to approve the policy on the use of athletic field lights at Cha-Cha Field, policy FI, as presented, including option B.
Second.
Any
So
discussion?
now we have some discussion.
Any discussion?
So I have some thoughts, but I also have first a question. So, Zena, there are other elements of this policy that are either italicized or struck.
Mhm.
So what is your are you seeking to move through this policy in sort of disparate pieces with some motions? Or what is your position, for instance, on how seasons are articulated in this policy?
So what is struck, I would keep struck out, like I would strike it out. So in number 3, I would strike out that first sentence. I agree with that. Take out the seasons. I trust our athletic director and our superintendent to guide this process thoughtfully. So whatever is already struck, I would keep it that way.
Okay. So it's been moved and it's been seconded. That's not a motion that I'll support tonight, but as I am sort of listening to kind of both sides on this, this issue of looking forward to community feedback is really important to me. The timeliness of this, I think, is important because the polls are already up. But what the polls themselves are, or poll bases are there. And so, if I can just sort of ask this question, with favorable action on the part of town meeting, the lights would be up and available when?
The input we get from
Ish.
town officials this fall.
You said for fall sports, Mr. Correct?
Okay, so fall sports. So the point I was going to make is, with lights available for fall sports, not a future school committee, but this very school committee could actually get feedback on these lights well before next spring's election. This committee might get feedback from these folks, from the athletic director and from the folks here in the gallery tonight on whether it's working well or not. And so what I struggle with is, do we make a wholesale decision there's some risk associated from sort of the quality of life concerns? Maybe they're legitimate, maybe they're not. There's certainly the anxiety around them are real. So do we make a move towards 10 o'clock and hope that it will be fine? Or do we go with a more conservative approach and expect that we will hear it is fine? So as I sit here tonight and I'm thinking about what Susan said some minutes ago about trying to delineate between, Susan, you said spring and summer, but being considerate of school schedules. You know, the spring season does conflict with school, but the summer doesn't. I could support 10 o'clock in the summer and stick with 8:30 in the other 3 seasons. Get the lights up, use them, and we get feedback. And then we're in a position to decide if 10 o'clock is what we want to do across the board. Or there may be community members that come forward and say 8:30 is fine, we can keep them on until 9.
And I think I would agree with you, Chris, if we didn't actually already have data that 10 o'clock's working in neighborhoods that are much tighter than this one, where the lights are much closer to houses. If this was the very first field we were putting lights on in town, and this was the very first neighborhood we were affecting by lights, as a town, I would absolutely 100% agree with you. But I think we have data that 10 o'clock is working. We need to find out if it's going to work for this field like it's worked for the other 3 in town that are already lit that late, with neighbors that are much more adjacent to the field than they are at Cha-Cha.
If I may, it may not be the first field with lights in town. It is, however, the first school field in town with lights. The people who are going to come back and talk to us aren't going to talk to us about what's happening at West Side. They're not going to talk to us about what's happening at the soccer fields. We, as a body, are interested in what happens in the school fields, and I appreciate the data that we can get from other fields.
Right.
We have never had lights on these fields. So I appreciate that data may be useful. I just would rather be conservative. I think I agree with Mr. Nixon that I expect, well, I don't know if he said this exactly, I expect that 8:30 we will see that there is no problem and that we will likely, I'm paraphrasing what I think he was saying, we will likely be able to move them the time later. I'd much prefer that option than having the 10 p.m. shut off and having people come back and saying this is unacceptable and having us re-debate moving it earlier. Not to mention the revenue stream, which may not be our primary interest. We would then have people say to us, you can't stop now. We're getting this money. And there would be different pressure. So I think that it's easier to go later.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I think when you say that, though, you're only considering one stakeholder group you're saying that it's going to be satisfied that it's working for, and that's the neighbors. I think that the stakeholder groups that are saying, I think that it's very highly likely that the youth sports would be another stakeholder group that may come back to us and say 8:30 is not working.
If I could jump in here, I think the folks from youth sports and Mark made a really good point. If you have an 8:30 stop time for lights, it's really a 7:30 stop time because no one's going to use it after 7:30 because there's not enough time for them to use it. And so if you are saying 8:30, what you're really saying is 7:30, and it won't be used at night. And so that I think we just have to be open about that because I'm hearing from the youth sports groups that they're not going to rent it for an hour.
Absolutely.
And Mark's going to use it till 7:30. So I think it's important consideration that when the original policy was established, it was not considered.
Thinking about that.
Right.
I would propose a motion to amend the motion that's on the table to have the stop time be 9 p.m. on all days instead of 10 p.m., subject to the condition that MIA sanctioned games would be able to go till 10 p.m. I think that would be a reasonable compromise and would again allow us to move forward. An extra half an hour would allow rentals. It would allow us to collect the data from this field, determine whether we want to go later, whether that's fine, or whether we need to put them off earlier.
Including on Sunday?
Including on Sunday.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the main motion. Is there any discussion of that?
So just to clarify, so what he's suggesting it's a similar grid to B, except it's 9 instead of 10, and then presumably, because he didn't say otherwise, so we're still striking reference to the seasons and so forth. So it's a 365 approach, it's a 9 o'clock time instead of a 10 o'clock time.
Precisely, and with MIA sanctioned games allowed till 10.
So 7 goes back on.
And we need 7 to remain, yes.
Yeah.
And again, just to clarify to the chair, then we would still be striking, I believe Zena was saying we still strike the reference to only Winchester Public Schools and Winchester Youth Organization. So even with the 9 o'clock time, it would still be open to other groups. Yeah.
Can I clarify something about that? Sorry. I want to make sure that we're not extending the time but not solving a problem. What I heard was from Mark was that you needed 2 hours for a practice. So if you're getting off the field at 7:30, if we're extending it to 9, it would have to actually be 9:30 to actually compromise and solve a problem. That extending it to 9 is sort of doing something in name only, without actually.
In my experience, the minimum rentals
Or 2
that
hours.
groups want 2 hours.
Because I could consider 9:30, because that would make
Okay.
it earlier and.
Totally believe that's possible. All my kids' practices are 1 hour and 15 minutes, softball and in soccer. So maybe evening practices or evening rentals, you'd need 2 hours. I'm certainly not. I won't question that.
Can I say something else real quick as well?
Yep.
Is that you're also eliminating, if you're saying 9 o'clock across the board, you're in, whether you take this into account or not, is that the baseball games that are starting at 7 o'clock throughout the summer, if you're saying 9 o'clock throughout the year or 9:30 throughout the year, a lot of these baseball games take 2.5 hours. So sometimes 3 hours. So senior Babe Ruth games, men's league baseball games, league high-level softball games. Not so much the softball, but because they're less innings, but baseball games, you potentially lose those as well. I'm just throwing it out
And to
there.
clarify, what time of year again?
Summer.
Some late, spring, summer.
So in
Spring
other
and
words,
summer.
Brian has made a proposal that would have lights shutting off at 9 as early as this fall in September. And there would be, I would expect, some feedback from you, Mark, and from anyone who would rent, and from the community. And if it goes well, I think that's an issue we could revisit.
But I'm hearing we won't rent it, so we won't have that information.
I struggle with that, Michelle. I mean, I'm a hockey dad. I was 5 minutes late tonight because I dropped 2 kids in Middleton on the ice, and I'm picking up 2 more kids at Revere at 10:45 tonight. And we buy ice 50 minutes at a time. So as Judy said in the
Different
subcommittee meeting,
sport.
if there is demand, and there is demand, somehow that will get filled. I'm very sympathetic towards this issue of the hour, and I'm glad Brian sought the clarification earlier, because the warrant for Springtown meeting, the background, actually says Winchester Athletics off the field at 7. So that's clear tonight, it's really 7:30. That's important for us to understand, it was a good clarification.
All right, so I think in the interest of moving things along, I should call for a vote on the amendment, on the motion to amend. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
So now we go to an amended motion.
Okay, so now we need to vote on the motion as amended,
Mhm.
the first motion, which is to change it to
To what?
9 p.m.
9 PM across the board.
Can you read back the motion for the audience?
Yes.
Because we didn't hear anything.
I hope you can read
Are
back
you
the,
talking the first motion or or the amended motion?
we have now,
Which amended motion?
well, we amended, we voted on the amendment, and now we're gonna vote on the amended
You could vote on the
motion.
amendment until you voted on the first motion. Okay.
Am I
that's fine.
getting that
listening.
wrong? I'm sorry.
No, there was a motion and then a motion to amend, so you work backwards. So we just voted a motion to amend. So
Okay,
instead
well,
of 10
what's the
o'clock, we're at 9
So
o'clock.
what's the amended motion?
Please.
Yeah.
Motion on the amended the motion on the table and have the stop time of 9 PM, subject to the MIA games that could go to 10 PM, including Sundays.
Everybody understand what the motion is?
Is that Four Seasons?
What seasons? That was all
Yes,
seasons?
that's all seasons.
All seasons.
I move to amend it to 9:30, based on the athletic director's comment.
So you're making another motion to amend
To 9:30,
to 9:30.
to at least make
With
sense.
MAIA sanctioned games ending at 10.
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
So all those in favor of amending the main motion so that it's lights off at 9:30 on all seasons? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 2 opposed. Okay, so the main motion is to
Change option B.
change option B,
As presented, including option B.
but option B is
9:30.
9:30.
and I guess that would we would
And
have
then
to be
restore-
sure,
Have to
we have to
put
restore the 10 o'clock
MIA.
time for MIAA games.
Right.
Number 7.
Okay, is everybody clear on that?
Mm-hmm.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. So, again, we can get some data and revisit.
Can I,
Can I-
and specifically, can I just ask that,
Mhm.
I would really like to hear back from the athletic director and from some members of the community and those who would rent the field once we have some experience under our belt
Mhm.
in the fall.
Yes?
I was gonna request the same.
Just, should I say something to that? Spring is the worst time for the rentals because there's more teams, just so you know. Fall's not as nearly as bad
Okay.
as spring, just so you know.
Well, it was a compromise.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
We're gonna
He
move
means when we
forward.
get
I
reports
know,
back.
I know, I know.
Okay.
Thank you for your. 9:30. And noise carries.
And we want to hear about how that works, and we will try to figure that out.
We're gonna talk about the article
No,
next.
actually, because I think we need to just postpone that, because it's some legal questions.
Well-
Yeah,
Oh, you mean the
Back to on
donation?
the baseball. The baseball
Oh,
donation, we
donation.
don't need you for that.
Yeah.
yeah.
We're gonna defer that.
Do you,
Thank you, Mark.
Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Mark.
do you want to, thank you. I was talking to Aaron, who's behind you, sorry.
So now we have to go back and vote on the support.
Yeah, we now have to vote on the, supporting the article. If you want to speak to the financial aspects to this, in this
You have nothing else to add
context?
about
Context.
town meeting support of the article?
We have the article at town meetings in support of just building the installing the lights,
Thursday night.
which is on Thursday,
Article 32.
Article 32. And since there's a financial
Can you sit where
aspect
there's
to
a
that.
mic, Aaron, if he's gonna?
Now that you can
So policy is
squeeze in.
fulfilled, it's leaving everyone.
So, Aaron Cotillo, Vice Chair of the Finance Committee. Finance Committee voted favorable action for Article 32. We had asked for and received potential rental revenue data for 3 turnoff scenarios, 8:30, 9, and 10. We also then asked for expenses, operating expenses, borrowing cost expense, and field replacement cost expense. When we broke down numbers, we did feel comfortable that at least operating and borrowing cost expenses would be covered under all 3 scenarios. However, that was based on the revenue projections that were provided and assumed full utilization. That said, Finance Committee, the sentiment within was we would certainly feel more comfortable with a later scenario than 8:30 to increase the likelihood that that demand could be as full as possible to actually cover both the borrowing cost, the maintenance cost, and to hopefully start to put money away for the field replacement cost. Because as everybody's heard in town meeting, the budget is tight, and even though it seems like we're placing more burden on field replacement than we do for other capital projects, we still want to do what we can to cover all the costs associated with the fields. So that's where Finance Committee stands, and Sam will get up and speak to that, I'm sure, Thursday night. Okay?
Good to know, thank you.
Yep,
Yeah.
happy to.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron.
So can I share, I have this idea of a amendment to the motion for Article 32 to share tonight. And that is that although most of our major school projects in terms of oversight is a shared responsibility between the town manager and either the EFPBC or the school committee or the superintendent or some combination thereof. The way the motion reads for 32, if you look down there towards the bottom of the paragraph, speaking towards how the appropriation shall be funded by the unexpended bond proceeds set forth, for which the project is complete and for which no liability remains, there is a semicolon, that the town manager is authorized to have oversight of said project. I move that we approve Article 32 tonight, recommend favorable action with an amendment that actually reads the town manager and school superintendent are authorized to have oversight. And the intention of this is frankly to give Dr. Evans a seat at the table as the project is purchased and installed. Questions may come up. Already I know there were some questions that came up around the conduits and so forth to make the lights available. That had an impact on scheduling that I don't think was necessarily transparent to either Judy or Mark or Rhea. This doesn't change anything functionally, but I think it's an important sort of gesture towards Judy since it's a school site. I had the opportunity to briefly touch base with the chair of the select board who certainly just not speaking for the board, but as a chair felt like this was I believe he called it a friendly motion, and as well got a text from the town manager tonight that that certainly seemed like a reasonable thing. So one might argue it's semantics, but I think it's important. It's a school site, and at the end of the day, school project.
I would second that.
Was that a motion? Or
I made a motion.
Okay.
Yep, and
Sorry, I was seconding his motion.
and Susan, and if
This is
this
a really long motion.
It was such a long motion that I forgot the first part of it. I'm sorry, but
it's all right,
okay.
I'm not wounded. And just from logistics, Susan, so if this is approved tonight, it may well be that the select board just meets prior to town meeting and takes it up. It might even be introduced by the town moderator as simply moved, and it's been amended, if you will, by the proponents.
Okay, so we wouldn't necessarily have to sort of stand up
Rise
and
on the
ask
floor.
and muddy the waters on the floor of town meeting.
Exactly, that's not the intent.
Okay.
Okay, I'm glad you explained that. All right, so we have a motion and a second, and it's to support Article 32 and also amend the motion so that Judy is involved in the actual supervision of the building, so.
All in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Cable.
Yes, we have every 7 years or so, a cable advisory committee, and.
Page 30.
On page 30.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. And Zena is interested in being on this new creation and giving our input so that we are able to avail ourselves of having a good cable agreement and help WinCam and hopefully help the students at the high school get more access to learning about cable and broadcasting and production and all that. So
And it requires a vote as opposed to a
just-
chair appointment, right?
yeah, I think it's, I'm not sure what the cable agreement and what the regs say, so I think it's safer just to have a vote to appoint. So, yeah, if somebody can just make a motion to.
So I move we appoint Zena Marchant to the Winchester Cable Advisory Committee.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So then we have some donations. We have a donation from the McCall Parents Association. Judy, you want to?
So I'm sorry, Brian
flag
had to
these?
step out for a minute because he's the one who writes this check
Oh.
every year.
Okay.
Oh, that's
I
funny.
don't know if we want to wait for him to come back.
We can come back to it, yeah, we can.
Come back to that. So
Well,
the
we
next.
used to write the check every
We used to write the check every year, no more.
Is the high school PFA
So
the
the next one is a grant from the Winchester High School Parent Faculty Association in the amount of $649.98
Do
for
you or Ellen know what this
art,
is?
art materials.
This is for Jen Levatino's program. She requested the grant so she could buy some additional items.
I make a motion to accept with gratitude the McCall, wrong one.
Winchester High
Sorry,
School.
wrong page. The Winchester High School PFA in the amount of $649.98 is presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Maybe Jen can speak to the next one.
Yes, the Anchor one.
Sure. So I spent some time on this. Carolyn spent a lot of time with Enka over the past year trying to figure out a way to meld both their mission and what we can do in public schools around, Ellen got pulled in as well, around funding and legalities and all of those pieces of how we can best provide aid directly to students and doing that in a way that fits all of our regulations. So this was the final product after a year of this. So they are looking to make this donation right now to start this fund, and then they intend to continually replenish this fund. So this is really just to get us through anything this year and then over the summer. And then they're looking to make another donation to start next year. And this will be, right now when we do field trips or we do, enrichment activities, typically there's a built-in cost that allows students that are, unable to fund going, that's a piece of what everybody else is paying. So this takes away that piece. We can just charge what the actual cost is for the students, and then there's this scholarship fund that will allow anyone that is unable to pay to be part of a program or like one of our summer pieces, field trips, those kinds of things. We already have our first request, which if this is approved tonight, we will be able to approve tomorrow.
Excellent.
So this is a great partnership with Inca, and we thank them very much because this is certainly probably a costly endeavor.
Right. I just want to remind everyone that even though we are an affluent district, we still have close to 300 students who are economically disadvantaged, and we want to make sure that we care for them in sensitive ways that maintain their privacy and encourage everyone to fully participate in all programs and offerings.
Yeah, this is a great idea. I'm glad Anka's doing this. So can I have a motion?
I make a motion to vote to accept with gratitude $5,000 from the Enka Society to support a fund for students to participate in co-curricular and extracurricular activities throughout the district that require family payments.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So we're going back to.
Going back to McCall.
Page 31. We saved this for you.
Thank you.
So, page 31. So quickly, this is the McCall Parents Association extracurricular activities donation, which funds about half of the cost of running all of our extracurricular programs. I want to again go on record as saying that I'm hopeful that in the future we can build this into our regular budget. I think this should be a school department expense, but I am extremely grateful to the parents group for association for funding this annually. It's a huge program and very, very beneficial to our students.
I will say, as the former PTA president at McCall, we were delighted to write that check. And as such, I would vote to accept with gratitude the McCall Parents Association extracurricular activities donation in the amount of $22,000 to support programming at the middle school.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No one's here for the fun part of the meeting.